Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Also, you can request any novel so I can turn into audiobooks. Check out our Patreon for more details.
51, Chapter 51, A City That Teaches Them to Dream. The newcomers found bundles laid neatly on their beds, soft wool tunics dyed in the rich reds and deep browns of Narnia, cloaks lined with fur against the northern chill, boots of toughened hide that would not split in the mud. Maria gasped when she lifted Nina's little dress, finely stitched with lion embroidery. "We cannot," she began, but Lyanna only shook her head. "You're Narnians now. Every Narnian must be clothed against the cold, and no one goes wanting here." Doran laughed as he tugged on a heavy cloak. "Better than anything I've owned since I was a boy." By sunrise, work already began. Master Rurik, a square-shouldered man with mortar in his beard, clapped Doran on the back and shoved a trowel into his hands. "We'll see if you can cut a straight line in stone," he said gruffly, though the twinkle in his eye betrayed approval. Doran threw himself into the work, hauling stones, laying mortar, and laughing with the crew as if he had belonged for years. Oliver found his place in the mill, the great wheel turning steadily under his guidance. Two young boys, apprentices barely into their teens, were assigned to him. "Load the hopper slow, lads," Oliver told them, "and keep your ears sharp. A stone will tell you when she's had enough." Flour dust clung to his hair and beard before the first hour was done, but he wore it like a badge of honor. Meanwhile, Sirius had other plans for the children. "Come with me," he told Elsa and Nina with a wolfish grin. "If you're to live in Thelmer, you should see more than stone walls and kitchens." The city unfolded before them in a rush of sound and color. Narrow streets brimming with stalls of fruit, cloth, and trinkets, bells clanging from the smithies, the scent of roasted chestnuts drifting through the crisp air. Sirius cut through the crowds with easy confidence, a hand on Nina's shoulder when she lingered too long at a toy stand. He led them to the heart of Thelmer, where a wide park stretched like a green jewel amid the stone. It had been Harry's idea to give the city's children a place that was theirs, and the park was alive with laughter. Wooden climbing towers and rope bridges swayed with scrambling boys and girls, a wheel contraption spun shrieking children round and round, smooth plank slides ended in piles of soft straw. Elsa and Nina froze at the sight, wide-eyed. "Go on," Sirius urged with a chuckle. "It won't bite you." Nina bolted first, scrambling up a ladder while Elsa more cautiously balanced across a log beam. Soon enough both were laughing, swept into the tide of children. Sirius sat himself on a bench under a tall ash tree, watching with folded arms. Several parents nearby recognized him and offered nods of respect, but Sirius only grinned and waved them off. When the games ended, Sirius gathered the girls and marched them toward the far side of the park, where soldiers trained in neat ranks. The clang of steel rang out, sharp and proud. Elsa's mouth parted at the sight of armored men and women sparring, their blades flashing in the sun. "They're amazing," Elsa whispered. "They are," Sirius agreed. "Every man and woman here trains to protect this city. And one day, if you wish, you might hold a blade yourself. Not to kill, but to defend what's yours." The girls listened with rapt attention, clutching his words as tightly as they had clutched the ropes on the playground. Later, as the sun slanted low, Sirius spotted a familiar horse cart rattling past. He waved and called out, "Kellen." The driver pulled to a stop, laughing as Sirius helped the girls onto the cart. "To the harbor?" Kellen asked knowingly. Sirius said. "They've never seen a ship." The cart rumbled through the streets, down toward the smell of salt and tar. The harbor unfolded in a sweep of masts and sails, gulls wheeling and crying overhead. Elsa and Nina gasped aloud. Dozens of ships, from stout merchant cogs to sleek fishing vessels, bobbed at anchor, their rigging singing in the wind. Sailors shouted to one another, barrels rolled across planks, and nets heavy with silver fish glittered in the fading light. Nina gripped the railing with both hands, her eyes wide. "They're like castles, but floating." Elsa said nothing at first, simply staring at the tallest mast as if trying to measure its height against the sky. Sirius stood beside them, his tone softening. "Ships are freedom. They can take you to lands you've never dreamed of, but they're dangerous too. The sea doesn't forgive fools." He let that lesson hang a moment, then smiled again. "Next time, I'll bring Daddy. When he's with us, you'll be allowed to board. For now, you look, and you dream." The girls nodded solemnly, clutching the memory tight. With Lyanna's guidance, Elsa was enrolled into the school just like the rest of the children in Thelmer. Every morning, a sturdy horse-drawn carriage rolled up to the gates of Gryffindor Castle. Painted with the crest of Narnia, it was large enough to carry more than a dozen children, its benches lined with laughing faces. The children of stewards, masons, soldiers, and kitchen hands all piled in together, and now Elsa joined them, clutching her small satchel with excitement. Nina watched her sister with wide eyes, still too young to attend but eager for the day she could. She would follow the carriage until it disappeared down the road, waving until Elsa waved back from the window. For Doran, Oliver, Maria, and Beth, this simple routine was nothing short of astonishing. They had grown up in the north with grim tales of the wildlings beyond the wall, barbarians who lived in skins, who stole and killed, who raised their children like wolves. Yet here, in Harry's kingdom, those same people had schools greater than any they had seen in White Harbor. Children were not left to run wild but were gathered together each morning, taught to read and write, to count numbers, to learn stories of history and songs of courage. And every afternoon, the same carriage brought them safely home again. When Elsa returned from her very first day, she came bursting into the hall with a wide smile, clutching her new school supplies as if they were treasures. "Look!" she cried, spreading them out on the long table. A neat stack of parchment, 2 quills with fresh ink bottles, and a small reader bound in thick cloth. "They gave me these, and there's more books at the school, whole shelves of them. And we learned how to write our names, and they taught us numbers too." And she stopped only to catch her breath, cheeks flushed with joy. Maria stared, hands pressed to her mouth. Beth reached out to touch the quill as if it were made of gold. Oliver shook his head slowly, wonder in his eyes. "In Westeros, only lordlings' children got such things," he muttered. "Not a miller's daughter, not a builder's kin." Elsa rattled on, describing the massive school in Thelmer. She told them about the high windows that let in sunlight, the rows of desks where every child had their own place, and the great black slate where the teacher wrote letters so big the whole room could see. She described lessons in reading and writing, in numbers and sums, and even in history, though she admitted she had nodded off when the tale of old kings went on too long. Uncle Oliver chuckled at that, ruffling her hair. "History puts grown men to sleep too, little one. You're not the first." And Aunt Beth, Elsa added earnestly, there were girls there too, not just boys, all of them learning the same things. "They said when we are older, we'll learn other things too, like plants and healing, and maybe music." Beth blinked, her throat tight. "You'll grow cleverer than all of us," she whispered. Elsa beamed, hugging her mother and then Nina, who was already tugging at the quill, begging her sister to show her how to write. From the doorway, Harry and Lyanna watched quietly. Maria's tears, Oliver's stunned expression, Doran's slow nod, all of it told Harry more than words could. They had come from a land where survival meant hunger and suspicion. Now they stood in a hall where their children would grow with books in their hands instead of fear. Lyanna leaned toward Harry, her voice soft. "They'll never forget who gave them this." Harry said nothing, only watching as Elsa bent over the parchment, carefully drawing the first shaky letters of her name while Nina clapped in delight. With Elsa gone to school during the day, Sirius found himself spending more time with Nina. The two of them were often joined by Hilda, the steward's daughter with quick hands and quicker laughter, and Rorik's Boyadrike, whose father was the master builder overseeing much of Gryffindor Castle's expansion. They were all of an age, and though small, the four carried themselves with the bright energy of children who lived in a city that belonged to them. What fascinated them most, however, was Harry's training of the skin changers. From the shadow of a low wall, or peering through the slats of a half-built gallery, the children would sit for hours, whispering to each other as they watched. Harry now had nearly 50 students under his care. They came from every corner of Narnia, wildling-born, clan-born, even the odd orphan taken in by the new city. All of them bore the gift of skin changing. Some were teenagers, already lanky and restless, others were as young as Sirius himself, still clutching small stuffed toys when they thought no one was looking. The training yard was filled with the sound of caws, growls, and hisses. Birds wheeled in the sky, foxes darted between the legs of students, and the occasional bear cub snorted as a child's mind brushed its own. Harry walked among them, calm and certain, his voice steady as he instructed. "Feel the rhythm of the heart. Let the beast's breath become your breath. Do not force it, invite it." The children whispered to each other in awe. "Did you see that?" Sirius pointed as a boy of 12 closed his eyes, and a hawk perched nearby spread its wings in sudden harmony. Nina gasped. "It's like magic inside magic." Hilda folded her arms, trying to sound wise. "Lord Gryffindor makes it look easy, but it's not." Edric nodded. "Midas says only great lords in the old stories had gifts like this. And now, look, they're all in one place." Sirius's eyes shone, though his tone was thoughtful. "It's more than magic. Father says this will bind Narnia together. If children grow with animals as kin, they'll never be wild in the way our kin used to be. The four fell silent at that, listening as Harry guided one of the smallest pupils, a girl barely older than them, who was struggling to reach a gray hare's mind. His patience, his encouragement, the way the child finally gasped in delight when she felt the animal stir, all of it seemed like something holy. Life for the newcomers had quickly settled into rhythm. Each week there was one day when work stopped entirely. It was not wasted idleness but a day set apart. Families dressed in their cleanest tunics and cloaks and made their way into Thelmer. The temples were full on those days, each built in the style of the old gods, high pillars carved with runes, halls filled with flickering lamps and bowls of offerings. Maria and Oliver, Doran and Beth, all went in hesitation at first, but soon they found themselves comforted by the ritual. The markets and restaurants bustled with life afterward. Families dined together, trying dishes flavored with herbs they had never known, or salted meats prepared in the southern style. The men often drifted toward the pubs, mugs of foaming ale in hand, while children tugged their parents back toward the parks, the fountains, and the wide plazas where minstrels played. It was on these days of rest that Elsa and Nina first began to hear the old stories of Odin, Thor, and Frigga. Priests told them in solemn voice within the temples, and old men repeated them by firelight in the public squares. Sirius, who always listened closely, repeated them later to Hilda and Edric, retelling them in his own sharp, precise way. Elsa, quick-minded from her new schooling, was fascinated by the sagas. Nina's eyes shone at the thunderous tales of Thor battling giants. Slowly but surely, the children came to see themselves as part of something greater, a people bound not only by walls and work, but by faith. For Harry, this was no accident. He knew that faith gave shape to a nation. Through religion, through shared belief, even the fiercest wildling could learn to temper their fury and turn it into loyalty. Civilization was not built on stone alone, it needed stories, gods, and the promise that their lives were watched and weighed. And so, as the weeks passed, the northern newcomers found themselves changing. They prayed in the temples, they sang the songs, they watched their children learning letters and sums, manners and tales. What they once thought barbarism had revealed itself as something far richer, deeper, and more ordered than any hall south of the wall. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 52 Chapter 52 Into the Frozen Unknown. Time in Thelmer passed swiftly. The rhythm of work and rest, of training and laughter, had settled into something that resembled peace. Doran returned each evening weary but satisfied, hands covered in mortar dust, while Oliver came home from the mill with flour on his sleeves and pride in his eyes. Maria and Beth had found their place among the kitchens, laughing more often than they had in years. Elsa woke each morning eager for school, and Sirius spent his afternoons roaming with Nina, Hilda, and Edric, always watching, always learning. But Harry himself could not rest easy. He felt the pull of something greater, a whisper on the wind beyond the wall. At night, in the silence of the Gryffindor cast library, he sometimes caught himself staring northward, as if the very stones of the castle urged him to be ready. It was then that Harry turned his mind toward an old dream one he had never pursued in his youth. The animagus transformation. His father had done it. Sirius Black, his godfather, had mastered it too. Remus Lupin had never been alone on full moons because of them. For years, Harry had longed to learn but had never had the time, the space, or the guidance. Now, with the Black family library at his disposal, he had found what he needed, a slim, weathered volume bound in green leather, tucked among darker tomes of curses and blood magic. Its title was written in curling silver script, Metamorphosis of the Flesh, The Path of the Animagus. One evening, Lyanna found him hunched over it by candlelight, the flame flickering across his intent face. "Another project?" she asked, stepping softly into the study. Harry smiled faintly without looking up. "Not just any project. Something my father did, something Sirius did. An animagus. I've wanted to try it all my life." Lyanna raised an eyebrow. "And why now?" He turned a page slowly. "Because it's one of the purest transformations. No potions, no rituals of blood. Just will, discipline, and the courage to remake yourself. If I can master this, I'll not only gain power, but freedom." She leaned against the table, scanning the ink diagrams of shifting limbs, half human, half animal. "The book says it needs potions, doesn't it? Complicated ones." Harry chuckled wryly. "Yes, and I don't have the ingredients for the animagus draft. Rare herbs that don't even grow in this world. So I'll do it the hard way, manually, step by step, through meditation and force of magic." Lyanna folded her arms. "That sounds like torture." "Good," Harry said, finally meeting her eyes. "If it's hard, it will teach me more than any potion could." Harry's days became long and grueling. Each dawn, he sparred with the soldiers of Gryffindor Castle, blades flashing, sweat pouring, muscles burning. He drilled his body with unarmed combat until his knuckles split, then healed them with magic and started again. Afterward, he trained his wards and skin changers, never neglecting the gifted children who looked to him as both master and protector. But every night, when the castle quieted, he turned to the animagus discipline. He began with meditation, sitting cross-legged on the cold stone floor of the solar, drawing his magic inward until he could feel the pulse of his own heartbeat. He focused on the flow of magic in his veins, then forced his imagination to picture himself not as a man but as something else. The book had warned, the first step is the mirror of the soul. In deep trance, one must discover the animal within, the reflection of one's truest nature. Night after night, Harry sat in darkness, waiting. The first visions were fleeting. A flash of flying, the curve of a wing, the glint of slitted emerald eyes, the echo of a roar. But each time he reached, the image slipped away, leaving him gasping with the strain. Frustration gnawed at him. One evening, Sirius, who had been watching quietly from the door, piped up with his clear, too wise voice. "Maybe you're trying too hard, Dad." Harry opened his eyes, panting. "What do you mean?" "You always push," Sirius said simply, stepping closer. "But animals don't push. They just are. Maybe you should listen instead." Harry blinked at him, startled, then laughed softly. "You may be only 4 years old, Sirius, but sometimes you sound like a master sage." Sirius smiled, serious in his own way. "I listen more than people think." Even as he struggled with the animagus path, Harry never let his guard down. He could feel it, a ripple of power beyond the frozen lands. When he stretched his magic too far north in meditation, the air turned cold, and the runes on the castle walls thrummed like taut strings. Lyanna noticed his unease. One evening as they walked the battlements, she said quietly, "You're restless." "There's something moving out there," Harry admitted, staring into the endless dark line of the wall's shadow. "Something magical, old. I don't know what it is yet, but it's strong." "Stronger than you?" Harry hesitated. "Maybe. That's why I keep training. Magic, combat, and now the animagus transformation. I don't know who else walks this world, Lyanna. Sorcerers, witches, powers older than the wall. If they come, I need to be ready." She touched his hand briefly, grounding him. "You already carry more weight than most kings. Don't let fear drive you. Let it sharpen you." Harry smiled faintly. "That's what I'm trying to do." And so the days went on. The city of Thelmer grew. The newcomers found peace. The children played and learned. But in the quiet of night, while others dreamed, Harry pressed himself toward a transformation few had ever dared, certain that one day soon, the land would demand everything he had to give. Harry had always relied on Lyanna to tell him about the North. But Lyanna was not a woman who placed faith in myths. She believed in history, the deeds of men, the rise and fall of houses, the truth written in stone and song. By the firelight, she would recount the tales of the old Stark kings, grim men who had ruled from Winterfell since before the Undulls came. She spoke of their wars with the Marsh kings, whose crowns were made of reeds, and with the bloody Boltons who flayed their foes. She spoke of the Wolf's Den and the building of White Harbor, of the long battles to unite the North beneath a single banner. "These are the stories worth remembering," Lyanna would say, her eyes bright with the weight of lineage. "Stories of men, not phantoms." Harry listened, learned, and admired the depth of her memory. But it was the free folk who whispered the other stories, the ones Lyanna dismissed as fables. They spoke of the Night King, of White Walkers, of why the wall had been built not just as a border but as a prison. One old wildling woman, her face as weathered as the bark of a pine, told Harry by the hearth. They were made by the little green ones, the children of the forest, to fight the first men. But you don't make fire and not expect it to burn your hand. The walkers turned against all. That's why the wall stands. That's why we remember the cold that kills. Harry had felt the truth of it long before the tale. In his meditations, in his nightly vigils on the battlements, he could feel the stirrings of something vast and unnatural beyond the wall. The wards in Gryffindor Castle hummed faintly when his magic stretched northward, as though warning him. "White Walkers," he muttered to himself one evening, turning the words over like black stones. "The Night King. If it's true, then it's them. They're the source of the disturbance." Lyanna, standing beside him, shook her head. "Harry, these are tales to frighten children. I have read every account I could find. The wall was built to defend against the free folk, not phantoms. My uncle always said." "Your uncle wasn't wrong," Harry cut in, his tone calm but certain. "But he didn't feel what I feel. Magic doesn't lie. Something out there is stirring. If it is what the wildlings say, then I cannot wait for it to come south. I'll have to confront it before it comes to destroy what we've built here." Lyanna frowned, folding her arms. "And how would you even begin? Even if such creatures exist, you'd march alone into the frozen waste?" Harry's jaw tightened. "If I must." She reached out, her fingers brushing his sleeve. "You sound like a man courting death." "I'm a man defending life," he said softly, his eyes still fixed on the distant, endless horizon of the wall. That night, Harry sat alone in the solar, the Black family's animagus book open but forgotten at his side. His mind was not on transformation but on confrontation. The children of the forest, now extinct, had made the White Walkers with spells older than human memory. He imagined their magic, wild and green, twisting flesh and spirit into something colder than death. If even a shred of that power remained in the world, it would take everything he had, every skill, every weapon, every ounce of magic, to stand against it. Harry placed a hand on the wooden table, letting the wards of Gryffindor Castle sing faintly through his palm. He had built something worth protecting. Families, children, homes, temples, schools. A civilization rising beyond the wall where none had thought it possible. He could not allow it to be swept away in ice and shadow. "I will not wait for them to come to me," he whispered. "If the White Walkers walk again, then I will meet them on my own terms." Harry stood in the great hall at dawn, his cloak fastened and his weirwood staff in hand. The torches along the walls burned low, throwing long shadows across the carved beams. Lioness stood before him, arms folded tightly, her lips pressed thin. Sirius sat on the steps just below the dais, his sharp eyes bright with something between pride and worry. "You're truly going alone," Lioness said at last, breaking the silence. Harry nodded. "Yes, this isn't a war party. If I bring soldiers, it will look like I marched to fight. That's not what this is. I need to see, to know, before we commit to anything." "You could at least take scouts," Lioness pressed, though her tone was softer now, not argument but fear. "I don't need scouts," Harry said simply. "I can travel farther, faster, and quieter alone than I ever could with a company. And if things go wrong, I can return to Narnia with a thought." Sirius leaned forward, his small hands clasped together. "But you'll fight them if you see them?" Harry's gaze softened. "No, Sirius, not yet. This isn't a battle. It's a search. If the White Walkers are truly out there, I need to understand them first. What they are, what they want. Charging in with fire and steel won't save anyone." "But father," Sirius hesitated, then said with remarkable clarity for his years, "if they're coming, the Frostfang villages will fall first. The quarries, the settlement, the people." Harry crouched down before his son, resting a hand on his shoulder. "That's why I must go. If they are moving south, I'll know in time, and then we'll be ready. We won't be taken by surprise." Sirius swallowed hard, nodding. But his eyes still burned with a spark of excitement, the thrill that his father was marching toward the great mystery whispered in stories. Lioness exhaled slowly. "No one here has ever seen you fight with all your strength, not even me. You hide it, always. But I know, Harry. I know you're dangerous in ways the rest of us can't begin to understand." Harry gave her a faint smile. "That's why I go alone. Better one man bear the risk than 50. As word spread that Harry was leaving, the training yard filled with murmurs. Nearly 50 apprentices, children and youths alike, those who trained under his guidance as skin changers and spellcasters, gathered in hushed groups. When Harry stepped among them, silence fell like snow. One boy of 14, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped forward. "Master, let me come. You've taught us to fight, to hold our ground. We could help." Others quickly joined in, voices overlapping. "Please, Master. We won't slow you down. We're ready." Harry raised his hand, and the clamor stilled at once. His gaze swept across their young faces, filled with loyalty and burning eagerness. "You are my strength," Harry said. "Each of you. But this is not your fight, not yet. You are still learning, still growing. I am not going to wage war, I am going to see, to understand. When the time for battle comes, you will have your part. But this time, you must stay." A murmur of disappointment rippled through them. One girl, no older than 10, clutched the small fox that often curled around her shoulders and whispered, "Will you come back?" Harry's eyes softened. "Always." By midday, Harry stood at the northern gate of Thelmer. A small crowd had gathered, apprentices, soldiers, townsfolk, even some of the newcomers who had once feared him. They did not cheer or call out. They only watched, quiet and solemn, as Harry adjusted his cloak against the wind. Lioness stood closest. "If you fall," she began. "I won't," Harry said firmly. "And if I do, I'll rise again." It was not bravado, not arrogance, but the steady voice of a man who had walked through fire and survived. Sirius ran to him, clutching his father's leg briefly before stepping back, his voice clear. "Bring us knowledge, father. That's worth more than any victory." Harry's heart swelled with pride at the boy's words. He ruffled his son's dark hair, then turned northward. Without another word, he began walking, the great Frostfang mountains looming in the distance, the wall's shadow stretching long across the snowfields. The cold wind cut sharp, but Harry's steps never faltered. He was not the schoolboy who had once stumbled through magic and destiny. He was Harry Gryffindor, mage, warrior, builder of kingdoms. And he was going to face the fear that haunted the North, alone. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 53, Chapter 53, A Carpet Toward the North. The morning he left Thelmer behind, Harry did not set out on foot alone as most believed. Instead, he descended into the deep stone cellars beneath Gryffindor Castle. Dust lay thick on the shelves and crates, and in the far corner, rolled carefully and bound with a strip of red leather, was something he had not touched in years. The enchanted carpet. Harry brushed the dust away with a flick of his hand. The fabric shimmered faintly in the torchlight, runes glimmering along the edges where he had stitched magic into every thread. He unrolled it slowly, the colors bright as the day he had finished it, deep indigo, threaded with gold patterns that seemed to ripple like waves. When he had first enchanted it, Lyanna had been appalled. "You'll not have me sitting on some flying rug like a madman," she'd said at the time, pale at the thought. "I trust stone under my feet, Harry, not clouds." So the carpet had been rolled away, forgotten beneath barrels of dried apples and crates of mead. But now, with the journey north calling, Harry smiled faintly as he ran his hand across the fabric. "It's time you saw the sky." At the edge of the outer wall of Telmar, far from any watchful eyes, Harry spread the carpet over the snow. He stepped onto it, the old thrill bubbling up inside him like he was back at Hogwarts with his first broom. "Up," he whispered. The carpet shivered, then rose smoothly into the air, lifting him above the trees. The cold wind struck his face, sharper than any broom ride, but steady. He laughed aloud, the sound carried away into the endless white. The carpet was different from a broom. A broom answered like a darting hawk, fast and sharp. The carpet was gentler, like steering a boat on invisible water. It rolled beneath him with a strange softness, tilting at his weight, catching every breath of wind like a sail. "Not bad," Harry muttered, tugging gently on one corner. The carpet swooped left. He pressed down with his heel, and it dipped smoothly. Not bad at all. For the first time in years, Harry allowed himself to fly for the sheer joy of it. He banked over frozen rivers, skimmed treetops with a hand trailing in the frost, soared high enough to watch the Frostfang peaks glow silver in the morning sun. As he flew, memories pressed close. In his world, enchanted carpets had been banned by the ministry long before his birth. He'd read the dusty law books, flying carpets prohibited under Section 7 of the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Act. Ridiculous, he had always thought. What harm could there be in weaving magic into fabric? He had grown up on brooms, yes. He loved them, loved the thrill of a dive, the rush of Quidditch, the wind screaming in his ears. But he had always wondered what it would be like to fly differently, to soar not on a handle of twigs, but on something wide and steady, where you could lie back and watch the world roll by beneath you. Now, at last, he knew. And it was glorious. He could imagine Lyanna's scowl if she saw him now, hair whipping in the cold wind, grinning like a boy. She hated heights, hated flying, and had forbidden him from ever taking Sirius on the carpet. Too dangerous, she'd snapped once. A dragon is one thing, a rug? If you fall, you've nothing to hold on to. But Sirius had always begged. His son was as fascinated with the sky as Harry had ever been. "When I come back," Harry whispered to the wind, "I'll take you flying, Sirius. Just you and me, no one to stop us." The carpet hummed beneath him, its runes glowing brighter as if eager to be used again. Harry angled it northward. The wall's shadow lay far away, but with this, he could cover miles in minutes. He let himself relax as the snowfields unrolled beneath. Every so often he would stop, land, and test the controls, altering a rune here, smoothing the weave of enchantment there. He tinkered constantly, adjusting the carpet's stability and balance. "This will do," he said, satisfied after a long, smooth glide. "If the White Walkers are truly out there, I'll find them, and if they're coming south, I'll be the first to know." The wind whistled over the carpet as Harry pressed onward into the frozen unknown, a lone shadow soaring against the vast white silence of the north. The sun was already sliding down toward the jagged line of the Frostfangs when Harry guided the enchanted carpet lower. The sky was streaked in red and violet, the snow below glowing faintly in the last light. He knew better than to keep flying into nightfall. Shadows stretched long across the white wastes, and even a man as seasoned as he was had to respect the cold darkness of the north. He scanned the terrain below until he spotted a hollow near the edge of a frozen stream. It was sheltered by a cluster of pines and a small ridge of stone, enough to block the worst of the wind. With a gentle tug of his boot on the carpet's weave, Harry dipped low and touched down. He stepped off into the snow, boots crunching. "This will do." A flick of his wrist unrolled the canvas bundle he had carried from the castle. It was no magical mansion, no bottomless trunk, no glittering wizard tent from a Quidditch World Cup. Just a simple free folk tent, the sort any wildling might use. Harry had chosen it deliberately. He didn't want glowing wards or enchanted walls to give him away. If anyone saw it from afar, they'd think only a free folk had stopped for the night. With a wave of his hand, the tent pitched itself, the wooden poles slotting into place with a satisfying thump, thump. The canvas stretched tight and solid, blending with the wild. Next, Harry summoned stones from the stream bed. They flew to him, stacking neatly into a fire pit. He murmured a spell, and branches and deadwood snapped free from the forest edge, tumbling into a pile at his side. "Oxyo firewood," he said casually, and a final load arrived, dry enough to burn. Soon the fire was crackling, throwing orange light across the snow. The shadows of the pines danced on the canvas of the tent. Harry crouched by the fire and unpacked a small pot from his satchel. A wave of his wand filled it with clean water, and into it he dropped strips of dried meat, a pinch of herbs, and a handful of root vegetables he had carried from Thelmer's markets. The stew simmered slowly, filling the hollow with a warm, savory scent. For the first time all day, Harry allowed himself to relax. He had covered more ground than he expected. The Frostfang peaks loomed closer now, dark teeth against the violet sky. By tomorrow, he could reach the quarry village. He wasn't rushing. There was no need. If the White Walkers were moving, they weren't moving fast. The threat was distant still. He would rather arrive prepared than reckless. While the stew bubbled, he spread the carpet out near the firelight. His fingers traced the runes he had stitched years ago. Some glowed faintly, still strong, while others had dulled from disuse. Harry whispered fresh incantations, weaving more stability into the fabric. He tightened the wards that held the carpet's shape in midair, then adjusted its balance so it would respond more smoothly to sudden turns. The work was soothing, almost meditative. His father had tinkered with brooms in much the same way, carving and polishing them late into the night. Harry smiled faintly at the thought, though it was tinged with melancholy. The stew was ready by the time he had finished adjusting the carpet. Harry sat cross-legged by the fire, eating slowly, his eyes fixed on the north. Beyond those mountains lay silence and danger. He thought of Sirius, who had watched him leave with such bright eagerness. Of the apprentices, whose voices had clamored to follow him. He had left them behind to keep them safe, but he knew the truth: if the White Walkers truly walked, none of them would remain untouched. Harry set his empty pot aside and warmed his hands at the fire. The crackle of burning wood filled the night, broken only by the distant cry of a lone wolf. He breathed deeply, forcing calm into himself. He was not afraid. He had walked into darkness before and walked out again. And if the North truly hid the Night King and his servants, then it was better he face them now, alone, than wait until their ice spilled south and swallowed all he had built. For now, though, he let the fire warm him, the carpet rest beside him, and the stars wheel slowly overhead. Tomorrow, he would reach the quarry village. Tomorrow, he would be one step closer to the truth. Harry had been drifting toward sleep, the fire crackling low, when the sound tore through the night. A scream, raw, panicked, unmistakably a woman's. Then shouts, the guttural roar of a man, and the sound of struggle. Harry's eyes snapped open. He was on his feet in an instant, his senses stretching outward like a net. His heart thudded once, steady and calm, as the night sharpened around him. There, northwest, across the ridge. Without hesitation, Harry sprinted through the snow, his cloak snapping behind him. His superhuman senses carried the sounds more clearly now: the woman's sobbing cries, the thud of heavy footsteps, the scrape of something massive dragging through the frost. He crested a rise, moonlight spilling over the scene below. A brute of a man was hauling a woman by the arm, nearly lifting her off her feet. He was tall, broad as an oak trunk, his ragged furs straining at the seams of his shoulders. In one hand, he gripped a massive club tipped with a slab of sharpened stone. His eyes gleamed cruelly as the woman struggled against him, her cries breaking against the cold air. Harry's jaw tightened. In a heartbeat, he was between them, boots crunching the snow as he blocked the man's path. "Let her go," Harry said evenly, his voice carrying like steel through the night. The brute snarled, clutching the woman tighter against his body. His breath steamed in the moonlight, hot and foul. "Mine," he growled, the word thick with claim and menace. The club swung, sudden and brutal, aimed at Harry's head. But Harry only shifted his weight, a simple sidestep, and the stone whistled harmlessly past him. The brute roared, surprised, and swung again with crushing force. Once more Harry slipped aside, his cloak stirring lightly as if the attack were nothing. The woman sobbed, terrified, her nails clawing at her captor's arm. In frustration, the brute shoved her away, freeing both hands to grip his weapon. The woman stumbled, then ran, her bare feet flashing pale against the snow. She did not flee far, though, just to a safe distance, her wide eyes fixed on the two figures squaring off beneath the moon. Harry's gaze never left his opponent. The man was strong, yes, his arms were ropes of muscle, his shoulders broad enough to block the stars, but strength meant little against speed and precision. The brute hefted his club, grinding his teeth. "You die tonight." Harry exhaled slowly, loosening his shoulders, calm as a still pond. Try me. The brute roared again, swinging his club in a deadly arc. The stone tip whistled through the cold air, aimed squarely for Harry's skull. Harry moved like water, slipping just beyond the reach of the blow, his boots barely crunching the snow. The ground trembled when the weapon struck, shards of ice bursting up from the impact. The woman gasped, her hands clutched to her mouth, but Harry did not falter. His emerald eyes stayed locked on the man before him, measuring, calculating. Another swing came, wilder this time, and Harry stepped forward instead of back. The brute had not expected it. Harry slipped inside his reach, driving his fist square into the man's ribs. A sharp exhale burst from the brute's mouth, but he hardly staggered. Scars crisscrossed his face and neck, proof of a man who had survived 100 fights. This was no Green Raider, this was a warrior seasoned by blood and bone. Harry's heel lashed out next, slamming into the man's knee. The brute grunted, stumbling, but recovered quickly and shoved forward with a shoulder like a battering ram. Harry braced, absorbed the impact, and snapped his head to the side to avoid the club's wild backhand. The fight burned hot, each man a storm of movement under the pale moon. Harry's fists found their mark again and again, cheek, jaw, stomach, each strike precise, measured. Yet the brute endured, spitting blood and laughing, his voice a growl of defiance. "You hit like a wolf," he snarled, "but wolves bleed like men." Harry said nothing. His breath came steady, his body loose and coiled, while his opponent's swings grew heavier, slower, drunk with desperation. At last, the chance came. The brute lifted the massive club overhead for a killing strike. Harry surged forward, his hands snapping up to catch the haft. For a moment, they struggled, muscles straining, breath steaming in the frozen air. Then Harry's strength, raw, unyielding, wrenched the weapon free. The brute's eyes widened. Harry reversed the grip in a single motion and swung. The stone head cracked against the man's skull with a sickening thud. The brute staggered once, blood spilling from a gash across his brow. His eyes rolled back. Then he toppled forward, face first into the snow, the weight of his body shaking the ground as he fell still. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 54, Chapter 54, The Girl the North Claimed. The brute's body lay half buried in the snow, steam rising faintly where his blood met the frost. Harry exhaled a long breath, his muscles loosening at last. He let the club fall aside with a dull thud, the fight finished. Turning, he saw the girl still frozen at a distance, her chest heaving, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "It's over," Harry called gently. "You can go back to your people." The girl's eyes darted around the empty snowfields. The shadows of the trees seemed darker now, the silence heavier. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. She simply shook her head, trembling. Harry frowned. He had spoken too quickly. Sending her off into the night would be condemning her to risk wolves, more raiders, or worse. He had just pulled her from death. To abandon her now would be cruelty. "Listen," he said, softening his tone. "It's dangerous out here. I don't know if there are more of his kind nearby, or worse. Come with me to my camp. In the morning, you can go back safe." For a moment she hesitated, torn between fear of him and fear of the dark. Finally, she nodded. The smallest, quick tilt of her head, but enough. "Good," Harry said, relief flickering in his eyes. "Come on then. It's not far." The fire was still alive when they returned, flames licking warmly at the stones Harry had stacked. The tent stood solid against the ridge, plain and unremarkable. Harry had chosen it precisely because it blended in, but when the girl saw it, her brows knit. Her gaze slid past the canvas shelter almost without interest, then caught sharply on the iron pot still steaming beside the fire. Harry noticed it immediately. Her eyes lingered there, wide and hungry. "You've not seen a cooking pot before?" he asked. She shook her head, stepping closer as if drawn. "We roast on spits. On the fire." Harry smiled faintly. "Well, tonight you'll eat from a pot. There's stew left. Sit." He ladled what remained into a wooden bowl and passed it to her. She sniffed once, uncertain, then took a careful bite. Her eyes widened at the taste, and she quickly ate more, her hunger overtaking her caution. Harry sat across the fire, watching quietly. There was something striking about her, something beyond her youth. She was no older than 15, perhaps 16 at most. Her furs were torn, her face pale with fright. But when she looked up at him, he noticed her teeth first. Straight, even, almost perfect. Among wildlings, Harry had rarely seen that. Most bore crooked smiles, gaps, or jagged edges worn by hard living. But hers was different. And when she allowed herself the smallest smile at the taste of the stew, it was beautiful. When the last of the food was gone, the girl set the bowl down carefully, as if it were something precious. She licked her lips and finally found her voice. "You saved me." Harry inclined his head. "No one deserves to be dragged off into the night." She hesitated, then straightened her back a little, trying to appear braver than she felt. "My name is Astrid." Harry gave a small nod. I am Harry Gryffindor. At that, her eyes widened, shock breaking through her fear. Harry Gryffindor? She repeated, almost stumbling over the name. Are you a kneeler? Are you from the Night's Watch? Harry's lips curved faintly. I am not from the Night's Watch. And I am not a kneeler. Astrid frowned, confused. Then why such a name? Only kneelers have names like that. Fancy names. We have Astrid, Score, Etta, but you, she shook her head. Harry Gryffindor sounds like a lord. Harry chuckled softly, stirring the embers of the fire with a stick. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But I promise you this, I'm no kneeler. I stand where I choose. Astrid tilted her head, still staring at him with a mixture of awe and suspicion. She pulled her furs tighter, though Harry noticed her shoulders had eased a little. The worst of her fear was ebbing away. The fire burned low, and the night grew colder. Harry rose and gestured toward the tent. The night's too dangerous to sleep outside. Wolves hunt, and worse things than wolves. Astrid glanced at the shelter. Her brow furrowed, but she nodded faintly. Harry went in first, ducking beneath the flap. The inside was plain and enough space to 2 people, little more. He set his knife aside within easy reach, then stepped back to allow Astrid in. She hesitated at the threshold, then followed. Harry gestured to one side. That's your area. I'll take the other. The girl obeyed silently, curling up under her fur. Harry lay down as well, careful to keep a respectful distance. For a while, he stared at the ceiling of the tent, listening to the soft rustle of fabric and the distant call of owls. Tomorrow, Frostfang Village, he thought. Answers will begin there. Sleep claimed him slowly. When Harry woke, the sun was only just climbing over the ridge. Cold light spilled through the flap of the tent. He shifted slightly, only to realize something was draped across him. Astrid. She was still asleep, her face softened in slumber. One of her arms lay across his chest, and one leg was thrown carelessly over his, as though she had sought warmth in the night without thinking. Careful not to wake her, he eased himself back against the pillow, eyes drifting upward to the faint patterns on the tent's roof. The day was beginning, and ahead lay the Frostfangs, the quarry village, and perhaps the first whispers of the White Walkers. But for this moment, he simply lay still, letting the quiet warmth of the tent shelter them both from the chill of the northern dawn. When Astrid stirred awake the next morning, her first bleary glance was at Harry. She blinked, then quickly pulled her hand back from his chest as if burned. For a moment, Harry thought nothing of it. He sat up, fastening his cloak, already preparing to break camp. You should head back to your people, Harry said matter-of-factly. I've got places to be. Astrid sat up slowly, furs gathered tight around her shoulders. Her face hardened in a way that surprised him. No, she said flatly. Harry frowned. What do you mean, no? Her chin lifted. You stole me, from Score. That makes me yours. Your wife. Harry blinked at her, caught completely off guard. What? Astrid's eyes narrowed, suspicious of his reaction. Don't you know our ways? A man who takes a woman become her husband. Always. You fought for me. You won. I am yours now. Harry dragged a hand through his hair, exasperated. Astrid, I think you misunderstand. I wasn't fighting to claim you. I was stopping him from hurting you. That's all. But the girl only shook her head, her expression unyielding. You can't undo it. It's done. I belong to you. Harry pinched the bridge of his nose. I already have a wife. And a son. That only made her lean forward, eyes flashing with disbelief. Then I'll be another. Many men have more than one wife. You are strong, stronger than any I've seen. You can keep us all. He sighed, trying to remain patient. Astrid, I don't want another wife. I want you safe, that's all. Take the tent. Take weapons, trinkets, whatever you need. But go home. For the first time, her bravado cracked. Her lips trembled as she shook her head violently. If you don't take me with you, I die. Do you want my death on your hands? Harry's chest tightened. He hated the trap the words spun around him, hated that she knew exactly how to twist the knife. He could already see the truth in her eyes. If he abandoned her now, she would not survive. He cursed softly under his breath. You're not leaving me any choice, are you? A small, victorious smile curved her lips. No, you are mine now, and I am yours. They set out together toward Frostfang Village, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The mountains loomed closer, jagged peaks catching the morning sun. Harry kept his pace brisk, hoping silence would dissuade her, but Astrid was giddy. She walked close, too close, often brushing his arm or peering up at him with bright eyes. Every step she seemed to find an excuse to stay near. Your cloak is warm, she said cheerfully. It's Narnian wool, Harry replied curtly, stepping a little away. You walk faster than anyone I've seen, she tried again. I've had practice. Your hands are not scarred, she added, peering at them, but they are strong. How many men have you killed? Harry sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose again. Enough. She smiled, entirely unbothered by his tone, as if his irritation rolled right off her. Good, then no one will take me from you. Harry said nothing, staring ahead at the road winding into the mountains. Inside, his thoughts churned. Lyanna is going to murder me when she hears about this. And yet, he could not bring himself to abandon Astrid. Not when she had looked at him with such certainty, not when the alternative was death. Uncomfortable or not, Astrid walked beside him as though she had always belonged there, bright-eyed and fearless, as the Frostfang village came into view in the distance. The village at the edge of the Frostfangs was unlike anything Astrid had ever seen. Her eyes widened the moment she stepped into the clearing, where halls of solid stone rose from the earth like the bones of giants. These were not crude huts or half-buried lean-tos. They were long, low buildings with thick walls, each one large enough to house a dozen families. In the center of every hall, great fireplaces blazed, their smoke curling up into the cold air. The scent of roasting meat drifted out as villagers gathered with bowls in hand, sitting in warm circles. Stores of grain and smoked fish were stacked neatly against the walls, much of it carted in from Thelmer and Gnome City. For wildlings, who once scraped survival from snow and bone, this village was paradise. Astrid stopped in her tracks, her mouth parting in wonder. Stone halls, warm fires, and food enough for all? She whispered. This is no village. This is heaven, and there are many of them. Harry gave a faint smile. It's what happens when people work together, Astrid. When they choose more than just survival. But before he could say more, Astrid walked straight to the nearest gathering of villagers and boldly introduced herself. I am Astrid, she declared, chin high, wife of Harry. The hall went silent. Men glanced at each other, women raised their brows, and children stared wide-eyed. Within moments, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harry pinched the bridge of his nose. Of course she did. He stepped forward quickly, hands raised. Listen, this is not what it sounds like. There's been a mistake. But the villagers crowded close, listening intently as Harry explained. He told them about the brood in the snow, about how he had stepped in only to protect Astrid, how he had meant nothing by it, how she had insisted it made them husband and wife. I already have a wife, Harry finished firmly, and a son. I never meant to claim another. He had expected understanding, perhaps even laughter at the absurdity of the situation, but instead, the villagers nodded solemnly, their sympathy falling on Astrid instead of him. She's right, said an older woman, her voice edged with iron. That is our custom. You took her. She belongs to you now. She can't go back, another man added. If you leave her, she'll be shamed. Better she goes with you, as your wife. You're our king, should you not honor our ways too? A chorus of agreement followed. Astrid looked up at Harry with shining eyes, as though the village itself had sealed her claim. Harry's jaw tightened. In Narnia, stealing women is forbidden. It is against every law we live by. The elder woman shrugged. This is not Narnia. Our ways are older than your kingdom, older than your walls. If you are king of the free folk as well, then you must honor us. The words struck him harder than he wanted to admit. He could not simply dismiss their traditions, not without alienating the very people he sought to unite. That night, Harry sat apart from the fire, his cloak pulled close, wrestling with the choice before him. Astrid was only a girl, yet in her eyes he saw no doubt, no hesitation. She truly believed she was bound to him, and the villagers had only reinforced it. When he returned to Thelmer, Lyanna would not take kindly to this, nor would Sirius. And yet, if he abandoned Astrid now, her fate would be as good as sealed. The next morning, Harry found her waiting at the edge of the village, eager to follow him north. No, Harry said firmly. You cannot come with me. I am going further north, to a place where even fire struggles to live. The land of always winter. It is no place for you. Astrid's face fell, but she stepped closer, desperate. Then take me with you now. If I stay, I am nothing without you. You promised. Harry's gaze softened. I promise you this, when I return, I will take you to Narnia. You will live there, with warmth, with food, with safety. But I cannot take you where I go now. You would not survive. Her lip trembled, but she nodded at last. You swear it? I swear it, Harry said. She let him go then, though not without a lingering glance that burned with stubborn certainty. Harry left her in the village, knowing it was the safest place for her until his return. Then, with the enchanted carpet unrolled once more, he rose into the pale northern sky. The Frostfangs fell away beneath him, their peaks sharp as knives. Beyond them stretched the endless white, no roads, no forests, no warmth. The land of always winter waited. Harry pulled his cloak tighter, the carpet steady beneath him, his eyes narrowing against the icy wind. Somewhere out there, he would find the truth of the White Walkers. And when he did, the fate of all he had built would depend on what he discovered. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 55, Chapter 55, Flame in the Land of Always Winter. The carpet soared over a world smothered in endless white. Snow stretched as far as Harry could see, broken only by jagged ridges of black stone and glaciers that glittered faintly under the pale moonlight. The cold here was different, sharp, biting, alive. Each breath he took seemed to scrape his lungs with frost. No man could live here, no village could stand. And yet Harry's skin prickled with the unmistakable sensation of magic. Old, alien, and hostile. He slowed the carpet, scanning the horizon. Then he saw it. A line of corpses trudging across the snow, their movements slow but relentless. Dozens, no, hundreds, of them. Some were men, their faces gaunt and rotted, their armor rusted. Others were women and even children, their eyes empty, their mouths hanging slack. They moved in eerie silence, not a sound of breath or life among them. Harry's blood chilled. So the stories were true. He angled the carpet lower, wind whipping through his cloak. At the head of the corpse army stood a figure. Tall, lean, its skin pale as ice, its hair long and white as snow, and its eyes, 2 points of burning sapphire blue, bright and cold, locking instantly onto Harry. The White Walker tilted its head, then raised its hand. Ice gathered in its palm, hardening, stretching, until a spear of frozen crystal formed. With an inhuman howl, it hurled the spear skyward. Harry jerked the carpet sideways, the weapon cutting past him so close it froze the air against his cheek. It shattered against a cliffside far below with the sound of cracking glaciers. The walker did not pause. Another spear coalesced in its hand, grown from the very moisture of the air. With terrifying strength, it hurled again. This time, Harry did not dodge. He leapt. The carpet dipped as Harry hurled himself from it, plunging through the air. His hand snapped forward, and with a flash of scarlet fire, the sword of Gryffindor appeared in his grip. Its silver blade gleamed crimson in the pale light, hungry for battle. The spear ripped past him as he fell, close enough to ruffle his cloak, but Harry twisted midair, landing with a crash of snow only yards from the walker. The creature hissed, frost spilling from its mouth. It raised its icy weapon, but Harry was already moving. Gryffindor's might. Harry roared, swinging the sword in a two-handed arc. The blade cut through the walker's weapon like glass, biting deep into its torso. For a heartbeat, nothing happened, then the walker split apart with a sound like cracking ice. Its body shattered, fragments scattering across the snow in a spray of frost. Nothing remained but shards of ice melting into the ground. Harry stood panting, the sword humming faintly in his grip. Around him, the army of corpses faltered. Their glowing eyes flickered and dimmed, their bodies swaying uncertainly as if puppets whose strings had been cut. Then they collapsed. Hundreds of corpses toppled into the snow with soft thuds, limbs stiff, silence reclaiming the frozen waste. Harry knew better than to leave them lying. He raised his hand, sweeping in a great arc. Incendio Maxima. Flames roared to life, igniting the corpses in a wave of searing fire. Flesh and bone blackened and curled, smoke rising into the air as the horde burned. The stench of charred rot filled the cold night. Harry's eyes narrowed. Not this time. You won't be raised again. He watched grimly until the last corpse was ash and cinders. The snow around them melted into steaming pools. Only then did he allow himself to sheath the sword, its crimson gleam fading as it sank back into magic. The wind held across the empty waste. Harry turned slowly, staring out at the endless horizon. One White Walker destroyed, one horde burned. But there would be more. He could feel it, dozens of others, scattered through the land of always winter, watching, waiting. The Night King himself still remained, and this was only a scout, a test. Harry exhaled, his breath fogging in the freezing air. So it begins. Harry did not turn back immediately. The land of always winter was too quiet, and his instincts urged him to press further. So he flew on, the carpet whispering low across endless snowfields, his senses spread wide. It wasn't long before he found them. 3 more White Walkers, each leading their own shambling horde. They were not strong, no more so than the first. They wielded their ice-forged spears with menace, but their movements were predictable, clumsy even. Against the sword of Gryffindor, they were nothing. Harry leapt into battle without hesitation. The silver blade cleaved through frozen armor and pale flesh alike, shattering the creatures as if they were made of glass. Each fell with the same sharp crack, their bodies breaking into shards that melted instantly upon touching the snow. Their armies of corpses collapsed with them, and Harry wasted no time. Fire roared from his wand, sweeping across the frozen fields, reducing the dead to ash. The flames crackled, hissing as they sank into the ice. When it was done, Harry stood in the center of a blackened scar on the white land, his breath misting in the frigid air. And then, he felt it. The presence that had lurked like a shadow since he entered this place was withdrawing, moving back, retreating deeper into the heart of the frozen wilds. The White Walkers knew now. They had learned. They understand, Harry muttered, gripping the sword tighter. There's someone protecting this land. They won't rush again. They'll wait, watch, choose their moment. The thought chilled him more than the wind ever could. Harry exhaled and looked southward. I can't linger here, hunting them one by one. Narnia needs me. The people need me. If I fight every battle here alone, I'll bleed myself dry before the true war even begins. Still, he would not leave the land unguarded. From his enchanted trunk, Harry drew smooth stones carved with runes, wards of his own design, painstakingly crafted in the weeks before he left. He buried them deep in the snow, one after another, spreading them across ridges, valleys, and narrow passes where any army would have to march. Each stone thrummed faintly with his magic, a tether tied directly to him. If a White Walker or one of their undead crossed the wards, he would know. He would feel it, no matter where he stood. When the last stone was placed, Harry brushed frost from his gloves and straightened. "That will buy us time," he said to the wind. He rolled out the carpet once more, preparing to leave the cursed land behind. His heart yearned for Narnia, for warmth, for Lyanna and Sirius, for the life he had built. The storm quieted as suddenly as it had begun. The pressure of magic did not fade, however, it grew sharper, more focused, pulling Harry's senses toward a cluster of ancient weirwood trees half buried in snow. Their red leaves glistened wetly against the white, their carved faces watching in silence with weeping eyes. Harry guided the carpet lower, his hand on the sword of Gryffindor. But as he approached, he realized something. This was not the cold, hostile magic of the White Walkers. No, this was older, deeper, bound to the very roots of the land. He landed softly in the snow. The air was heavy with power, and then he saw them. From the gnarled roots of the largest weirwood tree, small figures began to emerge. Children, but not human children. Their skin was dappled like bark, their eyes large and golden, luminous in the gloom. The children of the forest. Thought extinct. Harry's breath caught. "You still live." The nearest child tilted its head, regarding him curiously. Its voice was soft, like leaves in the wind. "Few of us remain. We hid when men took the world. We hid, and we remembered." Another stepped forward, older, its face carved with lines of age. "And we felt your fire, the dead you burned, the walker you slew." Harry tightened his grip on his sword but did not raise it. "I thought you were gone. History says men destroyed you." The child's golden eyes flickered. "History is written by those who build walls and call themselves kings. We are not gone, not yet." Before Harry could reply, a deeper voice filled the clearing, not from the children, but from the very heart of the weirwood itself. "You have come far, Harry Gryffindor." Harry turned sharply. The face carved into the weirwood's trunk seemed to move, its lips parting, its eyes opening with eerie life. The voice was old, heavy with centuries of memory. "You know my name," Harry said warily. "I know much," the voice replied. "I am the last green seer. Men call me the three-eyed raven. Through the roots of the weirwoods, I see the past, the present, and pieces of what may come." Harry felt the weight of the gaze upon him, as though the very tree were peering into his soul. "Then you know why I'm here. The walkers are moving." "Yes," the raven said, its voice a low rumble like distant thunder. "The Night King stirs. He waits in the shadows of the storm, biding his time. You have wounded him, though you do not yet understand how. He will not come blindly now." Harry frowned, stepping closer to the tree. "Then tell me how to end him. How to destroy the White Walkers before they sweep south." The children stirred uneasily, whispering among themselves, but the raven spoke again. "You are not of this world, yet you carry its fate upon your shoulders. Fire is your strength, steel your ally. But the Night King was not made to be slain by fire or steel alone. He is bound to the magic that birthed him, the very magic of my people." Harry's jaw tightened. "Then if your people made him, help me unmake him." The raven's carved face seemed to sigh. "It is not so simple. Magic that old does not yield easily. To end him, you must find the heart of his power, the place where he was made." Harry's thoughts raced. The children stabbed men with dragon glass, didn't they? That's how he was born. "If I find that place, then you may find the key," the raven confirmed. "But beware, Harry Gryffindor. The Night King is not your only enemy. Men, too, will fear you if you wield such fire. Kings, lords, even friends may turn against you." Harry's eyes hardened. "They already have, once. I survived. I'll survive again." The children watched him silently, as though measuring his worth. One of them stepped forward, holding out a sword, sharp and gleaming with ripples. "Take this," the child whispered. "It is Valerian's steel sword. It is our gift. One day, you may need it." Harry took the sword, its surface cold as death. The wind rose again, rattling the branches of the weirwood grove. Harry tucked the shard into his cloak and stepped back. "I can't stay. My people need me. But I'll return. When the time comes, I'll be ready." The raven's voice followed him as he mounted the carpet once more. "Remember, Harry Gryffindor. The past is written, the future uncertain. But you are the flame that does not belong to this world. And the flame may yet burn away the cold." As the carpet lifted into the frozen sky, Harry glanced once more at the children of the forest, their golden eyes glowing faintly beneath the weirwood. Then the trees fell away, and the land of always winter stretched out before him. By the time Harry's carpet descended into the Frostfang quarry village, the air was filled with eager murmurs. Villagers poured from the stone halls to meet him, their breath clouding in the frosty air, their eyes wide with expectation. They had all known their king had flown north into the land of always winter. None knew what he had faced, but they understood it had been dangerous. The silence was thick as Harry dismounted, his cloak heavy with frost. Was it done? One man called out. Did you succeed, King Gryffindor? Harry looked at their anxious faces, then gave a slow nod. Partially, he admitted. Not a complete victory, but enough for now, enough to keep the danger at bay. The crowd broke into cheers regardless, clapping one another on the back, their relief spilling into laughter and song. They didn't ask for details, it was enough for them to know their king had faced the nightmare of the north and returned alive. But not everyone was content to stand at a distance. Astrid rushed through the crowd, her furs clutched tightly around her shoulders. Her golden eyes were bright with relief. You came back, she said breathlessly, stepping so close she nearly collided with him. I told you I would, Harry replied evenly. She bit her lip, studying him. You could stay here, with me. This village is safe. These people are Nicker. You can stay here, Harry said gently. You don't need to follow me. Here, you'd be accepted. No one would call you wife or stranger unless you wished it. But Astrid shook her head fiercely, her jaw set with stubborn fire. No, I belong with you. The others can talk of customs all they want, my heart knows what it wants. I will not stay behind while you return to your hall of stone and fire. Harry sighed, already weary of the argument he had feared since he left her here. Astrid, Thelmer is not the Wilds. It has its own laws, its own ways. You may not like it. Then I will learn them, she said simply. But I will not be left. By nightfall, Harry had made his choice. He could not leave her here, not when she was so determined, and not when the thought of her dying in shame haunted him. So once more he unrolled the enchanted carpet. Its magical threads shimmered faintly in the firelight as it rose into the air, steady and strong. Harry climbed aboard, and Astrid followed, clutching at the fabric with both hands as it lifted from the ground. Her face went pale at the sudden lurch, but she refused to let go. By the gods, she whispered, clinging tighter. Flying. I thought this was only a tale. Only the gods themselves could soar. Harry guided the carpet higher, the cold wind whipping their faces. Hold on. It's a long way to Thelmer. I am holding, Astrid said through gritted teeth, her knuckles white against the fabric. I will not fall. I will not let you go where I cannot follow. The carpet soared above the frost fangs, the snowy peaks gleaming silver under the moonlight. Harry kept his eyes forward, his thoughts already on what awaited them in Thelmer, Lyanna, Sirius, the council, and the questions that would rise the moment Astrid introduced herself again as his wife. Beside him, Astrid trembled, not from fear, but from exhilaration. She clutched the carpet tighter and laughed breathlessly into the rushing wind. If this is what it means to be yours, then let the whole world call me wife. Harry said nothing, only tightened his grip on the carpet's edge, the great city of Thelmer waiting in the distance like a beacon. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 56 Chapter 56 A Claim Denied. Thelmer glittered in the distance as the enchanted carpet dipped toward its gates. Astrid's eyes shone in awe at the sprawling city, its towers of white stone, its bustling streets lit with lanterns, the banners of Gryffindor red and gold snapping in the wind. Your hall is greater than any I dreamed, she whispered, clutching Harry's arm. And soon, mine too. Harry's stomach sank. He had warned her countless times on the journey, but she had only laughed, brushing aside every caution. When they landed in the courtyard of Gryffindor Castle, servants and guards bowed, and word spread quickly, their king had returned. Lyanna was already hurrying down the steps with Sirius in tow. Relief shone in her eyes until Astrid spoke. I am Astrid, the girl announced boldly, stepping forward with pride. Second wife of Harry Gryffindor. The courtyard went silent. Lyanna froze, her face draining of color. Slowly, her gaze turned to Harry, then back to Astrid. What did you say? Lyanna's voice was calm, too calm. Astrid, emboldened, lifted her chin. Harry took me from another. By the laws of my people, that makes me his. Wife to wife, I stand before you. Lyanna's expression shattered. Hurt, anger, and disbelief collided all at once. Her eyes brimmed with tears even as her jaw clenched. She turned on Harry, her voice rising. How could you? After everything? Is it because after the shame I bore, don't you want me anymore? Another girl? Younger, prettier, untouched? Harry stepped forward quickly. Lyanna, listen to me. It isn't like that. I didn't choose this. I saved her, and by her people's custom, she declared herself mine. I tried to leave her behind. I tried to explain, but Lyanna shook her head, trembling. No, you've found someone better, haven't you? Someone not broken. Someone not ruined by a prince's folly. Her voice cracked. And now I am to share you. Harry's chest tightened. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. Lyanna, you know me, you know my heart. Saving her is not loving her. Do you not remember how I saved you once, from wildlings who would have taken you? Would you have had me turn my back on this girl now? For a moment, Lyanna faltered. Her anger warred with her memory. He had saved her, and that had been the start of their life together. Yet the sight of Astrid, so young and bold, tore at the deepest wounds of her pride and fear. No, Lyanna whispered, shaking her head fiercely. I will not share. I will not have her near this castle. If you mean what you say, then send her away, or send me away. Harry closed his eyes briefly, steadying himself. Sirius clutched Lyanna's hand, looking up at his father with confusion and worry. Mother, please, Sirius whispered. Father wouldn't do that. He wouldn't hurt you. Harry met Lyanna's gaze. You are my wife, Lyanna, my only wife. Nothing changes that. But I cannot cast Astrid into the snow to die. I will not. She will not stay in Gryffindor Castle if it wounds you so deeply, but I will find her a place, a safe place, until I can untangle this. Lyanna's lip trembled, her fury softening into sorrow. I don't want her here, Harry, not near you, not near us. Astrid, standing to the side, looked between them, her jaw set stubbornly. I am his, whether you will it or not. I will not be cast aside. The courtyard was thick with tension, the crowd watching with wide eyes. Harry raised a hand, silencing them. This is not the place for this quarrel, he said firmly. Astrid will not stay in this hall, but she will not be abandoned either. I will decide her place soon. For now, enough. He guided Lyanna inside, his heart heavy. He had faced White Walkers, slain them with steel and fire. But this battle, this wound between love and duty, felt far harder to conquer. It took days of careful words, patient explanations, and no small measure of authority before Harry finally persuaded Astrid to leave Telmar. She had clung fiercely to her claim, defiant in the face of Lyanna's fury, and more than once had to be reminded that the laws of Narnia were not the same as the customs of the Frostfang wilds. No man in Narnia may claim a woman by force, Harry told her, his tone gentle but unyielding as they sat together in one of the castle's quieter halls. Not even I. It is the law I swore to uphold. And if I bend it for you, then all I've built begins to crumble. Astrid's golden eyes burned with stubborn fire. You saved me. You struck him down. That makes me yours. I will not forget it, Harry Gryffindor, and neither should you. Harry exhaled, tired but steady. You are not mine. You are your own, but you will not be cast aside either. You will have a place, and a life, and perhaps, he hesitated, softening his tone, someone who chooses you for who you are, not because of old customs that only bring pain. She said nothing, but her silence was laced with rebellion. It was agreed that Telmar was no place for Astrid. Its people were proud, wholly Narnian, and deeply bound to their ways. A wildling girl, loud, unbending, still smelling faintly of smoke and snow, would only clash with them. So Astrid was sent to Gnome City. Harry himself escorted her, the carpet swooping low over the clustered homes built into stone hills, their windows glowing with warm light. People were bowing respectfully to their king, their eyes curious as they studied the young wildling girl by his side. This will be your new home, Harry said as they walked the narrow cobbled streets. Here you will work, here you will learn. The school kitchen always needs hands, and the cooks will teach you. Food, warmth, and honest labor, you'll have all of it. Astrid crossed her arms, lips pressed tight. I did not ask for kitchens. I asked for you. Harry paused, turning to face her. And I told you, Astrid, that cannot be. But here, you will be safe. And more than that, you will be respected. These people will not treat you as a prize to be stolen. They will treat you as one of their own, if you let them. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, grudgingly, she muttered, we'll see. The women of Gnome City welcomed her warmly nonetheless, ushering her toward the school, chattering about food, hearths, and work to be done. Their kindness softened her scowl, though she refused to show it. When Harry left Gnome City, he sighed in relief for the first time in weeks. Astrid was out of the castle, out of Lyanna's sight, out of the storm she had brought crashing down around his family. He did not fool himself into thinking it was over. Astrid was stubborn, too stubborn to give up so easily. But for now, at least, the law had been upheld. She had a roof, work, and people who would look after her. Perhaps in time she would learn the ways of Narnia, perhaps she would even find someone else to love, someone who truly wanted her. Harry glanced southward as he guided the carpet back to Thelmar. Perhaps, he murmured, but deep down, he knew. Astrid's fire had not been put out, only banked. Sooner or later, she would come back into his life, as fierce and unyielding as the northern winds. With Astrid settled in Gnome City and far from Gryffindor Castle, a new calm returned to Thelmar. Lyanna's shoulders seemed lighter, her eyes no longer clouded with doubt. She laughed more often, especially in Sirius's company, and Harry could feel the warmth in their home restored. It was not long before Lyanna and Sirius cornered him in the solar, eager for the story he had yet to tell. "Well?" Lyanna asked, settling across from him, her voice calm but expectant. "What did you find in the land of always winter?" Sirius leaned forward, eyes wide, barely able to sit still. "Did you really meet the children of the forest? Father, tell me everything. What do they look like? Do they speak like us? Can they use magic?" Harry chuckled, ruffling his son's dark hair. "One question at a time, Sirius. Yes, I met them. Yes, they spoke, and yes, they are powerful, though not in the ways men are. They are bound to the roots of the weirwoods, to the old magics of the land." Sirius's jaw dropped. "Why didn't you bring them back here? If the children of the forest stood with us, everyone would believe. The temples, the stories, it would make our faith unshakable." Harry stilled, Sirius's words striking deep. He had thought much the same on his way back, though he had been too consumed with survival and duty to act. "You're right," Harry admitted, his voice low. "It would have made everything stronger, more real, more undeniable. I should have invited them to Thelmer." He sighed, rubbing at his temples. "I'll make it right. I promise you, Sirius. We will go back together. We'll invite them ourselves." Sirius's face lit up like dawn. "Truly? You'll take me?" Harry smiled at his son's eagerness. "Yes, I'll take you. You deserve to see them with your own eyes." For now, Sirius's fascination shifted to the enchanted carpet. It had become more than a tool on Harry's northern expedition. Every mile flown had refined it, every adjustment Harry had made during his journey had smoothed its movements, balanced its lift, and strengthened its runes. When Harry unrolled it again in the courtyard, Sirius's eyes gleamed with delight. "Can I?" he asked, his voice hushed with anticipation. Harry smirked. "Try." With surprising natural ease, Sirius guided the carpet into the air. The fabric hummed beneath him, rising smoothly as if it recognized his touch. He laughed, the sound carrying across the courtyard as the carpet soared higher, then dipped low in a playful swoop. Lyanna's hand flew to her mouth, her face pale. "Harry, he's fine," Harry assured her, though he kept a close eye on the boy. Soon Nina and Elsa were clamoring to join. Sirius beckoned them up, and the three children clung to the edges, shrieking with joy as the carpet swept over Thelmer's towers and circled above the harbor. Other children cheered from below, calling for their turn. By the time Sirius landed, his cheeks were flushed and his eyes sparkled brighter than the stars. "It listens to me, father, as if it was made for me." Harry laid a hand on his shoulder, pride soft in his eyes. "Then it should be yours. The carpet belongs with the one who can fly it best." Sirius's mouth fell open. "Mine?" "Yes," Harry said with a nod. "A gift. Use it well, and never carelessly." The boy hugged him tightly, words failing him. That night, Lyanna stood with Harry on the balcony, her gaze fixed northward. Her hand tightened on his sleeve. "You faced them," she whispered. "The White Walkers. You saw them with your own eyes." Harry nodded. "I did, and I killed them. They're not unstoppable, Lyanna. Fire and magic will end them. But there will be more," she said, her voice trembling. "And if they come south?" Harry turned to her, cupping her face gently in his hands. "If they come, they will find me waiting. I will not let them touch Narnia, or you, or Sirius. You are my world, Lyanna. Nothing will happen to you. I swear it." Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled faintly, leaning into his touch. "You saved me once, and you've saved me again, tonight." Harry kissed her brow, his eyes hardening as he stared into the frozen dark beyond the wall. "Let them come. They will find this land defended." Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 57, Chapter 57, The Call of Winterfell. The morning sun poured through tall stained-glass windows, spilling golden light across the great hall of Gryffindor Castle. It was one of Harry's proudest creations, a hall built in memory of the school that had shaped his childhood, yet crafted to serve a new world. For massive oak tables stretched the length of the chamber, their benches crowded with men, women, and children alike. Here, there were no divisions of rank. Apprentices sat beside stonemasons, skin-changers beside kitchen hands, Lyanna's voice mingling freely with that of the seamstress who had brought her bread. Even Harry himself took no special place. He sat with Lyanna and Sirius halfway down one of the tables, his cloak thrown loosely over his shoulders, a plate of steaming porridge and fruit before him. The hall was alive with sound, laughter, clattering dishes, the deep voices of men telling stories of quarry work, the high-pitched excitement of children comparing their lessons. The smell of roasted meat mingled with the sweet tang of honey cakes, and in every corner, warmth and life abounded. Harry watched it all with quiet satisfaction. "This is what I built for. A kingdom where no man or woman dines alone, where lords and common folk share the same fire." Lyanna smiled as Sirius eagerly traded bites of sausage with Nina, who sat across from him, while Elsa recounted a dream she had had about flying on the carpet. Then the sound of wings filled the hall. An owl swooped down through the high rafters, its feathers pale gray, its flight sure despite the din of the feast. It landed gracefully on the table before Lyanna, scattering crumbs, and held out its leg. The hall quieted slightly. Owls always carried news, and news was a thing of weight. Lyanna untied the ribbon and unfolded the parchment, her brow furrowing as she read. Sirius leaned forward, curiosity lighting his eyes. "Is it from Uncle Brandon?" he whispered. "Or Gnome City?" Harry asked, sipping his cup of steaming tea. Lyanna shook her head. "It's from Winterfell, from my kin." Her voice carried a note of surprise. Harry arched a brow. "Your brothers?" Lyanna's lips pressed together as she scanned the words again. "No, from my father." At the mention of Rickard Stark, the table around them hushed further. Even those who had no ties to the north knew the name of the Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, and Lyanna's father. Sirius tugged at her sleeve impatiently. "What does he say, Mother? What does Grandpa want?" Lyanna's voice softened, though her face was tight with emotion. "He writes of me, of us. He has heard rumors. Strange stories drifting south, about wildlings disappearing, about a Night Watch members suddenly forgetting trails that they explored countless time. He fears something happening beyond the wall." Harry set down his cup slowly. "And what truth did you give him?" Lyanna folded the letter carefully, her hands trembling just slightly. "None yet. I never told him where Narnia is located, Harry. Not fully. Only how I am living. That I was safe. I wrote only that I am living in Narnia." The hall erupted into murmurs. Apprentices exchanged curious looks, builders frowned, and children whispered behind their hands. The idea of Winterfell, the ancient seat of the Starks, felt something happening, and now its lord had reached across the frozen miles to touch their lives. Lyanna's eyes shimmered, torn between pride and old excitement. "He asks if I will come home." Sirius's fork clattered against his plate. "Home? But this is home. Why would we leave? We built all this, didn't we, Father?" Harry put a steadying hand on his son's shoulder. "This is home, Sirius. But Winterfell is your mother's home, too." Lyanna's voice shook with emotion. "It's not that. My Benyon is getting married. My mother told me to look after him before she died." Harry exhaled slowly, his mind already racing through possibilities. "Then perhaps it's time you go home and meet your family." The castle of Gryffindor was alive with activity that week, every hall echoing with the sound of boots, armor, and the chatter of apprentices carrying bundles of supplies. Lyanna's return to the north was no small matter. For the first time since she had fled, she would walk the halls of Winterfell again, not as a ghost in rumor, but as flesh and blood. Harry oversaw the preparations with his usual precision. Maps were unfurled on the war table, candles flickering over inked lines of sea routes and mountain passes. His eyes traced each carefully. "You will first travel to Bravos," he explained, tapping the map. "From there, take a ship to White Harbor. The Manderleys are loyal to your father, they will welcome you. From there, the road to Winterfell is well kept." Lyanna's face lit with something he had not seen in her for years, childlike excitement. "White Harbor. It has been so long. And to see Winterfell again." Her voice softened. "And Benyon's wedding, Harry, do you realize how wonderful this is? DC Mormont is Maedge's daughter. Maedge and I exchanged letters often, even when all else was silence. Benyon and DC, it's perfect. He will have a wife strong enough to keep him in line." Harry smiled faintly, though his eyes never left the map. "Then it seems the North has some joy left to give you." Sirius bounced in his seat, barely able to contain himself. "We're really going to Winterfell? To see Uncle Benyon, and Uncle Ned, and Grandpa, and the Crypts?" Lyanna laughed, ruffling his dark hair. "Yes, little wolf. You'll meet your kin. They've only seen your face in portraits I've sent. Now they'll meet you properly." Harry's expression grew serious. "That's why you must go, Sirius. They need to see you, to know you're real." But Harry's greatest concern was not excitement, but safety. He summoned 10 of his finest apprentices, young men and women he had trained himself from the earliest days of Narnia's rise. Each bore the gift of skin changing, their animals at their sides as living extensions of their souls. Wolves, hawks, and even a massive bear answered their call. They stood before him in the great hall, clad in simple but sturdy armor. "You will go with Lyanna and Sirius," Harry said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "They are under your protection. You are not only swords and claws, you are eyes, ears, and shields. You are to see them safely to Winterfell, and safely back." One of the apprentices, a tall boy with the calm eyes of a hawk, bowed his head. "We will not fail you, master." Another, a girl with a wolf pacing at her heels, smiled faintly at Sirius. "It will be an honor to guard you, young lord." Sirius puffed out his chest, pretending not to be flustered. "I don't need guarding, but thank you." Harry chuckled, laying a hand on his son's shoulder. "Even the strongest need companions, Sirius. Never forget that." That evening, Lyanna found Harry alone in the solar, adjusting the wards that would alert him if danger touched the Frostfangs. She slipped into the room quietly, her expression softer than it had been in weeks. "You're not coming with us," she said, her voice low but steady. Harry looked up, guilt flickering across his face. "No, I can't. The watchers beyond the wall aren't gone, Lyanna. They wait, and I must be here to feel when they stir. If I leave, and they march." He shook his head. "I can't risk it." Lyanna stepped closer, placing her hands on his. "I know, I don't ask you to, but promise me this, when you can, you will come to Winterfell. You will meet my father and brothers, my family. Not as a man eloped with Lady Stark, but as the man I chose." Harry's green eyes softened. He kissed her brow, whispering, "I promise." The harbor of Thelmer was alive with the creak of ropes and the crash of waves when a sleek Narnian-built ship slid into port. Word spread swiftly through the city, Brandon Stark had come. Though exiled from the north, Brandon was far from forgotten. He had carved a new life here, at the edge of the Antler River, building the city of Frostshield with his own hands and the loyalty of thousands who had followed him. Now, with the news of Lyanna's journey to Winterfell for Benyen's wedding, he could not stay away. Harry met him on the docks, the two clasping forearms with the respect of brothers. Brandon's dark hair was windblown, his cloak smelling faintly of salt and smoke. Behind him stood his wife, Barbara Riswell, her eyes sharp but kind, holding their infant son in her arms. "Lyanna," Brandon called as his sister approached, Sirius skipping at her side, "you'll not leave without me seeing you off. Not when our brother weds." Lyanna's eyes softened, and she embraced him tightly. "I thought you'd be buried in stone and timber at Frostshield. Yet here you are." Brandon chuckled. "Even exiles still have brothers, do they not? And if I cannot walk the halls of Winterfell, then let my steel and name travel there in my stead." Later, in the courtyard of Gryffindor Castle, Brandon unwrapped a long bundle bound in oiled cloth. One by one, he drew out the gifts, 2 swords, their steel gleaming, the hilts wrapped in leather dyed deep gray. "I forged these myself," Brandon said proudly, handing them to Lyanna. "Give them to Benyen. One for him, one for his bride. If I cannot stand at his side, let my work do so." Lyanna traced the blade with reverence. "They're beautiful, Brandon. He'll know it was you the moment he sees them." Harry, who had been watching quietly, smiled. "It's fitting. Steel forged by one brother, carried by another, given at the joining of 2 houses. That's a story worthy of the bards." That evening, Harry led Brandon and his family into a chamber where he kept one of his more beloved possession, the camera. With a flick of his hand and the whisper of a spell, a strange box shimmered into existence. Light burst within it, freezing the family into a perfect image, Brandon, standing tall and proud, Barbara at his side with baby Richard cradled against her chest. Sirius clapped his hands in wonder. "It's like magic painted faster than a blink." "It is magic," Harry said with a small grin. He whispered again, and the image expanded, filling a canvas nearly as tall as the Sirius. The portrait shone with lifelike detail, as though the family might step out of it at any moment. Lyanna's eyes misted as she studied it. "When I take this to Winterfell, they will see you as you are now, not as an exile, but as a husband and father. They'll see that you've achieved great deal, Brandon. You've built a life." Brandon's jaw tightened, though his eyes betrayed gratitude. "Then let them remember me that way." Sirius, meanwhile, was entirely taken with baby Richard. He leaned over the cradle, his green eyes wide with fascination. "He's so small," Sirius whispered. "Smaller than my arm. Does he do anything?" Barbara laughed softly. "He cries, eats, and sleeps. That's what little lords do at this age." Richard cooed, waving a tiny fist, and Sirius beamed. "I like him. When he's older, I'll teach him to fly the carpet." Brandon chuckled, ruffling Sirius's hair. "Careful, lad. At this rate, you'll have Richard believing he's half eagle instead of a Stark." Harry watched the exchange with quiet warmth. My son with a Stark babe in his arms. A moment of peace, even with war looming northward. That night, the great hall was filled with laughter and feasting. Brandon told stories of Frostshield, of people carving their underground halls, of builders raising towers taller than any in the north. Lyanna spoke of Winterfell, of their childhood beneath its grey walls. Sirius begged for tales of battles and wolves, and even Barbara shared a smile as she recounted Richard's first laugh. For a brief time, the burdens of exile and duty faded. They were simply family, together again in a hall of fire and song. And when the night drew long, Lyanna folded the portrait carefully into its frame. "When I walk into Winterfell," she whispered, "they will see you, Brandon. All of you, and they will know you are not lost." Brandon clasped her hands, his voice rough. "Tell them I am proud. Tell them I live well, and tell Benyen I am with him, in steel if not in flesh." Harry placed a hand on both their shoulders, his voice steady as stone. "It will be done. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 58 Chapter 58 The Golden Ship of Narnia. Braavos was never silent. Its harbors bustled at all hours with the cries of sailors, the splash of oars, and the creak of ropes heavy with trade goods. Ships of every shape and sail filled the waters, narrow fishing boats, broad-bellied merchant cogs, and sleek galleys flying the banners of distant free cities. Yet even in such a place, spectacle still had the power to hush a crowd. When the Narnian ship appeared upon the horizon, the harbor fell into whispers. It was no merchant's vessel. Larger than any ship that had docked in Braavos for decades, its hull gleamed as though burnished by the sun itself. Golden husks curved along its sides like the ribs of some mythic beast, while gilded pillars rose from its decks, supporting carved arches and banners embroidered with the white dragon of Narnia. At a distance, it looked less like a ship and more like a floating palace, gliding serenely through the waters as if the sea bent itself to its will. "By the Titan's eyes," muttered a dockhand, his jaw slack. "That's no trader's vessel." "Nor a warship," said another, clutching his cap. It's a king's house, sailing." Already the word spread, a Narnian ship had come, and with it, someone of immense importance. The ship anchored, casting its shadow over half the port. The murmurs grew into shouts as sailors, merchants, and even curious guards abandoned their work to gather at the docks. Then, with a groan like thunder, a section of the hull opened outward. A great golden bridge unfolded, its surface etched with sigils that gleamed faintly in the morning light. It extended until it touched the harbor stone with a heavy clang. Gasps rippled through the crowd. From the mouth of the ship, warriors marched out first, 10 men and women in polished mail, their cloaks crimson and gold, swords and axes gleaming at their hips. Their steps were measured, their faces cold and proud, the kind of bearing that spoke of discipline drilled into the bone. And then she appeared. A woman stepped onto the golden bridge. Her dress was simple, a gown of dark gray wool, bound at the waist with a leather belt. Yet there was something in her bearing, something regal, commanding, that silenced the crowd in an instant. Her hair was black as a raven's wing, her eyes a stormy gray, and though her garments bore no jewels or embroidery, she radiated the aura of a queen unspoken. Beside her, holding her hand, strode Sirius Gryffindor, her young son. He wore a dark green tunic embroidered with a white dragon, a small silver dagger at his side more ceremonial than practical. Yet there was something striking about him, something sharp in his green eyes that made the Braavasi pause. The boy walked with the air of someone far older than his years, his head held high, utterly unafraid of the crowd that pressed to see him. "Gods," someone whispered. "She is like the old Valyrian statues come to life." But it was not only her presence that turned heads. 2 massive wolves padded at their side, their paws striking the golden bridge with heavy thuds. They were nearly as large as horses, their shoulders broad, their eyes bright and keen. The moment their claws touched the harbor stone, they lowered their heads, scanning the crowd with unblinking suspicion. Their hackles bristled, their bodies tense with protective purpose. "Dire wolves," an old Braavasi murmured, his voice shaking. "The legends, they are real." The crowd recoiled, awed and terrified in equal measure. Lyanna Stark, once thought lost to the north forever, stood tall at the harbor, with her son Sirius clinging to her hand and the dire wolves flanking her like shadows made flesh. More followed. Apprentices clad in traveling armor, each bearing the mark of Narnia upon their cloaks. 10 of them, warriors all, their eyes watchful, their movements sharp. Each bore an animal at their side, a hawk perched on a shoulder, a fox weaving between boots, a black bear lumbering behind like a sentinel. The people of Braavos gaped. Skin changers, they thought. The old magics walk again. Behind them came attendants carrying trunks, casks, and bundles, gifts, supplies, and food enough to sustain a small army. 40 in total stood with Lyanna, Sirius, and the wolves when the bridge was withdrawn and the golden ship pushed back to sea, its sails catching the wind as it slipped away. The crowd erupted in shouts and questions. "Who is she? Is this the Queen of Narnia? Why come to Braavos with wolves and steel?" The guards in purple cloaks approached cautiously, their spears lowered. But the wolves growled low, sending a shiver through the stone beneath their paws. The guards froze, unsure whether to advance or bow. Lyanna raised her chin, her voice steady, clear enough to cut through the noise. "I am Lyanna Gryffindor of Narnia," she said, "daughter of Winterfell, daughter to Lord Stark. I come seeking passage to White Harbor." The crowd erupted again, but now the awe was tinged with reverence. For in that moment, no one doubted her. The wolves, the warriors, the golden ship, all declared her words as truth. And Braavos, city of coin and shadows, bent to listen. Word of the golden Narnian ship had already spread through every canal and alley of Braavos by the time Lyanna and Sirius stepped onto the harbor stones. People jostled for a glimpse of the dire wolves, merchants whispered about the fortune Narnia must command, and whispers raced ahead like wildfire. "The Queen of Narnia, daughter of Winterfell, is here." But it was not only common folk who came. Keyholders of the Iron Bank, richly cloaked magisters, and merchant princes left their counting halls to see for themselves. Each one of them knew what it meant for Narnia to send such a vessel, not trade, but power. Pushing through the crowd came Orlano, Narnia's agent in Bravos. A sharp-eyed man with a neatly trimmed beard and robes of dark silk, he was nearly breathless as he reached the dock. "My queen, young prince." He bowed deeply, his hand pressed to his chest. "Word of your arrival reached me too late, else I would have cleared the entire dock. Forgive me." Lyanna's lips curved faintly. "No forgiveness is needed, Orlano. We are here, safe, and that is enough." Sirius grinned. "Besides, I rather like the crowd. They look at us as if we stepped out of a song." Orlano's gaze flicked to the dire wolves, then back to Sirius with a wary smile. Young lord, songs indeed." Before Orlano could speak further, several richly dressed men stepped forward. One bowed low, a chain of gold heavy on his chest. "My lady, my lord," he said smoothly, "I am Calvados, keyholder of the Iron Bank. Allow me to offer you the hospitality of my house. It would honor me beyond words." Another magister quickly interjected. "My house is larger, and more fitting. Queen Lyanna, please accept my roof. You and your son will have all comforts." Lyanna's grey eyes flicked between them, her expression polite but unreadable. She had grown up amidst the politics of Winterfell, and she recognized the same hunger here, the hunger to be first in Narnia's favor. The murmurs stilled as a group of finely robed men in blue and silver approached. They wore circlets of hammered steel and bore the sigil of the Sea Lord of Bravos. The crowd bowed their heads, for no one ignored the Sea Lord's will. The eldest stepped forward, his voice resonant. "Queen Lyanna, young prince, our master, the Sea Lord, has heard of your arrival and bids me offer his hospitality. His palace awaits you, its doors open, its tables laden. He commands no less than this, that the guests of Narnia rest under his roof." A hush fell. Even the keyholders stepped back, their lips pressed thin with frustration. No one contested the Sea Lord. Lyanna inclined her head, her hand resting lightly on Sirius's shoulder. "Tell your master that I am honored by his offer, and I accept," she said with calm grace. "But remember, I am not your queen. I am only a wife, a mother, and a sister returning home. All else is Narnia's work, not mine." The envoy bowed deeply. "Even so, my lady, Bravos honors you." Behind them, the 40 Narnians who had accompanied Lyanna and Sirius stood in disciplined silence, their armor catching the sunlight, their beasts pacing restlessly at their sides. Their presence was impossible to ignore, an army in miniature, standing guard in a foreign city. The Bravasi looked on in awe and unease, a boy walking beside wolves, a woman who carried herself like a queen yet denied the title, and behind them, warriors whose loyalty burned in their eyes. Orlano leaned close to Lyanna as the Sea Lord's men prepared to escort her. "Do you see, my lady? They clamor for you. Every guild, every keyholder, even the Sea Lord himself. Bravos would bend its knee if Narnia so much as whispered." Lyanna's eyes flicked to Sirius, who was staring wide-eyed at the canals and the domes glittering in the distance. She smiled faintly. "Then let them whisper. My son will remember this day." Every shipowner in Bravos wanted to be the one to carry her. Merchants in silk barged into Orlano's chambers, bowing low. "Take my galley, my lady," one insisted. "The fastest oars in the narrow sea." Another offered with pride. "My carrack has cabins fit for queens. You and your son will lack for nothing." But Lyanna, wise in her caution, accepted none of them at once. She listened, weighed, and deferred the choice to Harry's instructions already set. Sirius, of course, was fascinated. He pressed his nose against windows to watch the ships line up in the harbor, each one with its banners flying, each one vying for their notice. "They're all fighting over us," he whispered to his mother. "Is this how kings feel every day?" Lyanna gave him a long look, both amused and weary. "Kings rarely feel anything, Sirius. They learn to wear masks instead." Far to the south, King's Landing was no less busy. The Red Keep bustled with activity as servants carried trunks, silks, and casks down to the waiting ships in Blackwater Bay. The royal family was preparing for a journey northward. The children were alight with excitement. Prince Viserys, still little more than a boy, dashed through the halls of Red Keep, declaring he would see snow for the first time. Princess Rhaenys, lively and sharp-eyed, was already pestering her handmaidens with questions about Winterfell and the wolves of the Starks. Prince Aegon, though still young, was equally eager. In her chambers, Queen Elia Martell sat watching her ladies fold silks into chests, her expression drawn and weary. "Do we truly need to go?" she asked, her voice edged with fatigue. "This is the wedding of the youngest Stark son. A courtesy event, nothing more. Must the entire royal household march north for such a thing?" Rhaegar Targaryen, her husband and king, stood by the window, his long silver hair catching the sunlight. He did not look at her when he answered. They sent me an invitation, he said simply. Elia's brow furrowed. A courtesy, Rhaegar, nothing more. They cannot expect the king to trouble himself with such matters. Let us send envoys, lords and ladies enough to flatter them. Rhaegar turned then, his violet eyes calm but unyielding. I am going north, with or without you. The chamber fell silent. The sound of servants packing seemed distant. Elia stared at him, her lips pressed thin. She had known, the moment he received the parchment, that his mind would not be swayed. And she also knew there was no changing it now. Her hands curled tightly in her lap. Then I suppose I must go as well, for appearances, if nothing else. Rhaegar's gaze softened slightly, though he did not speak. He returned to the window, looking northward as though he could already see Winterfell's towers rising out of snow. Elia lowered her eyes to her children, who were laughing and chasing one another between the trunks. She sighed. A journey north, but for what purpose? Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 59, Chapter 59, The Wolf Queen Returns. There were stories sung in every tavern from King's Landing to the Titan's Shadow. The tale of the Wolf Maiden, they called it, a song of a northern lady who forsook her betrothed, a great lord of storm and fury, to flee with a nameless common man. Minstrels in gilded halls told it as tragedy. In the streets, beggars sang it as romance. And all agreed on one thing: Lyanna Stark had vanished, her life ending in whispers and rumor. But now, the songs had changed. The same tongues that once mocked her now trembled to speak her name. She lives, not as some fallen girl hidden in a tower, but as Lyanna Greyfindor, queen of a land beyond the known maps, wife to a powerful king, mother to a boy whose eyes gleamed like emerald fire. The girl they had once pitied had returned a legend. In Bravos, news spread faster than wind on water. By the second day, painters were sketching her likeness in the plazas. Merchants whispered that she had arrived on a ship made of gold. Priests of the many-faced god murmured that she carried an aura untouched by death itself. Every noble house sought her favor. Every merchant dreamed of trade with Narnia, the kingdom that had grown rich from crafts and business. That evening, the Sea Lord of Bravos himself held a feast in her honor. The grand hall of his palace shimmered with candlelight reflected in pools of still water. Perfumed braziers filled the air with sandalwood and myrrh. Every noble in the free city attended, and every eye turned when she entered. Lyanna Greyfindor, dressed in silver-gray silk embroidered with the grey wolf, her hair braided with moonstone. Sirius walked beside her in a green tunic lined with gold, his small hand clutching hers, his expression as steady as his father's. Behind them trailed her Narnian guard, their cloaks a moving river of scarlet and bronze. The Sea Lord rose from his seat and bowed. Lady Lyanna of Narnia, daughter of Winterfell, Bravos is honored. Lyanna inclined her head gracefully. And Narnia is grateful for your welcome, my Lord Sea Lord. You honor not only me, but the house of my birth and the house I have built. Wine was poured, music swelled, conversation rippled through the hall. One merchant, flushed with courage and drink, dared to approach. My lady, is it true you once fled a lord for love of a common man? Lyanna's smile was faint, but her eyes glinted like steel. If that is the song you choose to believe, sing it. But remember, songs are for men who watch life from afar. I lived mine. The hall went quiet for a heartbeat, then laughter and applause followed, admiration spreading through the crowd. As the evening went on, Sirius explored the edges of the feast, marveling at the Bravasi fashions and the masks some guests wore. A Magister knelt before him, offering a sweet shape like a lion. You are the Prince of Narnia? He asked softly. Sirius tilted his head, thinking. Father says I'm not a prince. He says I'm just Sirius. The man chuckled. Then, just Sirius must already be a name to fear, if even the wolves follow you. From across the room, the two dire wolves lay near Lyanna's seat, their golden eyes watchful. That night, minstrels performed again, but the tune had changed. No longer was Lyanna the foolish girl who ran from her fate. She was now the Wolf Queen, the woman who defied her fate and returned crowned in her own right. And in every verse, the singers spoke of her son, the boy with eyes like spring leaves and wolves for shadows, the air of magic and winter alike. Sirius fell asleep on her lap before the song ended, and Lyanna stroked his hair gently, half smiling, half lost in thought. Let them sing, she murmured to Orlano as the final notes faded. They finally sing the truth or something close to it. Orlano bowed. Bravos remembers greatness when it sees it, my lady. Lyanna looked toward the dark sea beyond the open balcony. Then let them remember, for soon we sail home. Morning light streamed through the latticed windows of Orlano's mansion, a sprawling estate of marble courtyards and silk-draped halls that overlooked one of Bravos's smaller canals. The faint scent of jasmine drifted through the rooms, mixed with the faraway clatter of gondoliers calling to one another. Lyanna woke to the quiet murmur of servants already at work, while Sirius still slept beside her on the cushioned bench near the window, one arm draped over the gray fur of a dozing dire wolf. For the first time in many days, peace felt almost ordinary. This mansion, like much of Bravu's, was the work of wealth and patience. Orleano's banners, deep red trimmed with gold, hung from the balconies, and everywhere there were signs of prosperity, fine tapestries, silver lamps, and murals painted by SSE artists. Orleano himself was waiting in the dining hall when Lyanna entered, his beard neatly trimmed, his violet robe heavy with embroidery. "My queen," he greeted warmly, rising from his chair. "You honor my table again this morning. The boy sleeps well?" Lyanna smiled faintly. "He dreams of snow, I think. He misses home." "Home," Orleano echoed, pouring her tea. "A word that means many things. For me, it is Bravu's, and for that, I must thank you and King Harry. Without Narnia, I would have died like a common librarian. Now," he spread his hands, chuckling. "2 mansions, 2 wives, 3 ships, and a warehouse full of Narnian fire whiskey. Old age, it seems, agrees with me." Lyanna laughed softly. "You've done well, Orleano. You earned every bit of it." The morning meal passed with easy conversation. Sirius soon joined them, hair tousled, rubbing his eyes but alert the moment he saw the platters of sweet bread and fruit. "Good morning, Orleano," he said with boyish cheer. "Mother says you own half of Bravu's." "Not half," Orleano said with mock solemnity. "Only the parts that make money." Sirius grinned. "Father would like you." Lyanna looked between them, amused. "He already does, though he hides it behind gruff words and letters full of business figures." When the laughter faded, Orleano's tone grew serious. "I have arranged everything for your voyage, my lady. The ship Sea Maiden waits in the harbor. Her captain is one of mine, loyal and discreet. You'll sail with the tide tonight." Lyanna nodded. "You've done more than I could ask, Orleano. You always have." The old man leaned forward. "There are still those who would pay dearly to know where you are. I have made certain their eyes turn elsewhere. No word of your stay here will leave Bravu's." "Good," Lyanna said softly. "Harry trusted you for a reason." Orleano hesitated, then spoke again. "Let me come with you, then, or at least take 50 of my guards. The narrow sea is not kind to travelers, even royal ones." Lyanna shook her head gently. "You have your duties here. Your merchants need you, and Bravu's needs a man who speaks for Narnia when Harry cannot. I have enough protectors, 10 skin changers and 30 soldiers besides. You would only add to the attention I wish to avoid." Orleano sighed but bowed his head. "As you command, my lady. But I will not rest until I hear word of your safe landing at White Harbor." As the sun dipped low, the mansion's courtyard filled with the quiet hum of preparation. Servants carried trunks, and the Narnian guards inspected weapons and beasts. Sirius ran from one end of the courtyard to the other, excitement spilling from him like light. Orleano stood at the gate, watching them with fondness. "I remember when I first saw you, my lady," he said. "A young woman who have a greater purpose, even when she was a nothing. And now look at you. The songs in Bravu speak your name again, but this time, they sing it with pride." Lyanna smiled, though there was a glint of melancholy in her eyes. "I'll feel at peace only when I see the towers of Winterfell again." Sirius tugged at her sleeve. "We'll come back, won't we? After we visit grandfather?" "Perhaps," she said, brushing a stray lock of hair from his face. "But first, we go home." Orleano bowed low, his voice thick with emotion. "Then may the winds favor your sails, my lady, my lord." Lyanna took his hand and squeezed it gently. "You've done more for us than most kin ever did, Orleano. Never doubt that Harry and I are grateful." The old man smiled through moist eyes. "And I am grateful for the life you gave me." By moonrise, the Sea Maiden slipped from Bravu's harbor. Lyanna stood on deck beside Sirius, the 2 direwolves resting at their feet. The lights of the Titan burned in the distance, and beyond it lay the endless black of the sea. "Goodbye, Bravu's," Sirius murmured. Lyanna looked back at the city that had sheltered her, at the glow of Orleano's mansion high above the canal, and whispered, "Goodbye, old friend." The ship turned westward, its sails catching the wind. Ahead lay White Harbor, and the north she had not seen for a long time. The Sea Maiden cut through the water like an arrow of polished oak and gold. The narrow sea was notorious for its dangers, pirates of the Stepstones, raiders from the Three Sisters, even rogue sell-sails who preyed on merchant ships. But fortune favored them. For 5 calm days, the winds held steady and no black sails appeared on the horizon. Lyanna stood on the quarterdeck each morning, her hair whipping in the sea breeze, eyes fixed westward. "Thor smiles on us," she murmured more than once. "No storms, no blood." Sirius leaned over the rail beside her, watching dolphins race the ship's prow. "So that's the sea of my grandfather's tales," he said. "It doesn't look so dangerous." Lyanna smiled faintly. "The sea can change its face quicker than men can draw breath. Never trust calm waters, my son." But calm they remained. By dawn of the 6th day, the smell of pine and cold earth reached them, and before noon, the white stone towers of White Harbor rose from the mist. After 5 long years away, Lyanna Stark set foot once more in the north. The docks were busy even in the chill of morning. Fishmongers shouted prices, gulls screamed overhead, and the banners of House Manderley rippled above the harbor walls. When the Sea Maiden glided to the quay, its Narnian flag drew stares at once. No Narnian ship in living memory had come to White Harbor with sails woven in gold thread and figureheads shaped like dragons. Curiosity turned quickly to fear when the direwolves bounded down the gangplank. The beasts were massive, shoulders as high as a man's chest, eyes burning amber in the grey light. Their low growls rolled across the stone pier like thunder. "Seven save us," someone whispered. "Dire wolves, real ones." Panic spread among the dockworkers. Men stumbled back, dropping ropes and barrels. Children cried out. Then the city guard came running, dozens of men in green and blue livery, steel drawn and shields raised. "Hold!" their captain barked. "Step away from the beasts." The skin changers of Narnia moved just as swiftly. 10 of them fanned out around Lyanna and Sirius, their own companions, hawks, foxes, wolves, and a black bear, emerging from cages and shadows to stand ready. The air hummed with tension. Sirius pressed closer to his mother, eyes wide but unflinching. "Mother?" Lyanna raised a hand. "Stay behind me." The dire wolves bared their fangs, a low snarl rising from deep in their throats. Across from them, the Manderley soldiers hesitated, knuckles white on sword hilts. One wrong move and the dock would erupt in blood. The captain of the guard swallowed hard, taking a cautious step forward. "State your name, stranger. What business brings you to White Harbor with monsters at your heels?" Lyanna's voice cut through the noise, calm and clear. "I am Lyanna Greyfindor, daughter of Winterfell, daughter to Lord Rickard Stark, wife to Lord Harry Greyfindor of Narnia. These are my protectors, and this," she laid a steady hand on Sirius's shoulder, "is my son." The word struck the dock like a bolt of lightning. Murmurs rippled through the ranks of soldiers, a few men even lowered their blades. "Lyanna Stark?" the captain breathed. Sirius frowned. "Don't act like you knew her before, call someone who might recognize her." The captain blinked, taken aback by the boy's words. Lyanna's lips curved in the faintest smile. A horn sounded from the harbor wall, and moments later, riders appeared, Manderley men in silver armor, bearing the sigil of the merman. At their head rode Ser Whaley Manderley, the lord's heir. He reined in hard at the sight before him, the wolves, the soldiers, the glittering ship behind them. "What in the gods' names," he began, but then his eyes met Lyanna's. He froze. "My lady, it is you." Lyanna inclined her head. "It has been long, Ser Whaley. But yes, it is I." Whaley dismounted at once, dropping to one knee. "Forgive us, Lady Lyanna. We did not know you were coming." She stepped forward, resting a hand lightly on his shoulder. "I am here for my brother's marriage." The tension broke like a snapped bowstring. Soldiers sheathed swords, dockhands slowly returned to their work. The dire wolves lowered their heads but kept watchful eyes on the crowd. Sirius looked up at his mother, relief bright in his face. "Does this mean we're really home?" Lyanna gazed at the grey northern sky, at the gulls wheeling above the white towers. Her voice was soft but sure. "Yes, Sirius. This is also home." And behind them, the waves of the narrow sea lapped gently at the hull of the Sea Maiden, as if sealing the long journey with a whisper. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 60, Chapter 60, The Wolf Queen Returns. By the time the Sea Maiden dropped anchor in White Harbor, word had already begun to spread across the north like wildfire on dry pine. Lyanna Stark is back. Alive, and more than that, she was no mere lady in exile or hermit beyond the sea. She had a throne of her own. Every hall from Barrowton to Deepwood Motte hummed with the news. Maesters carried ravens with sealed letters, and travelers brought rumors thicker than snowflakes in winter. She had written to her brothers, to her father, and even to a few old friends from in the north. And as every lord and lady in the north read those letters, one thing became clear: Lyanna Stark was not some lost fool or vanished maiden. She was a queen, but the mystery of her new home only deepened the fascination. No map showed Narnia. No sailor could say exactly where it lay. Yet its ships were seen in every great port of Essos, painted in white and black, crewed by pale men and women who spoke the mix of Essoese and common tongue. Narnia's influence was vast. Their merchants brought rare steel, clear glass, and fine fabrics that shimmered like liquid light. Their gold flowed through the free cities, buying favors, ships, and silence. And now the secret was out: the Queen of Narnia was a Stark of Winterfell. Lords across the narrow sea sent letters to the north, hoping to gain trade or alliances through Winterfell, but none received replies. Only one lord in all Westeros had ever traded directly with Narnia, Rickard Stark. For years, ships had arrived quietly at White Harbor under Manderley's protection, bearing gifts and goods from the east, blades that never dulled, spices unseen in the Seven Kingdoms, and barrels of fire whiskey that warmed body even in the coldest blizzard. Few questioned it at the time. Now, all understood. Winterfell's silent connection to that strange, distant kingdom had not been mere trade, it was blood. Flashback, start. Lord Wyman Manderley himself nearly choked on his breakfast porridge when he heard Lyanna is the Queen of Narnia from his spy in Bravos. By the gods, he wheezed to his son Whaley, slamming a meaty hand on the table. The Queen of Narnia, Ricard's own daughter, is standing in my harbor, and I've no feast ready to greet her. She came unannounced, father, Whaley replied, trying not to laugh. No ravens, no warning, only the captain's report that she travels with wolves the size of horses. That's no excuse. No northern lord will say that House Manderley failed to welcome a northern queen. He turned to his servants with urgency rarely seen in White Harbor. Send word to the kitchens, fresh bread, meat pies, roast mutton, everything we have. Fetch the musicians, the banners, the silver goblets. The feast must be ready before she reaches the gates. The servants scattered, half in panic, half in excitement. Within the hour, White Harbor began to transform. The streets were swept clean, banners hung from every tower, and the scent of roasting meat filled the air. Flashback, and when Lyanna rode through the city gates later that day, Sirius by her side and the dire wolves padding silently at her heels, the entire harbor had gathered to see her. The Manderley guard flanked her escort, their armor shining under the pale northern sun. The crowd parted in reverent silence. For most, she was a legend made flesh, the lost wolf maid returned, crowned with dignity instead of sorrow. Lord Wyman himself stood at the steps of his great hall, his face red with excitement and tears in his eyes. My Lady Lyanna, he boomed, dropping to one knee despite his girth. House Manderley welcomes you home, and all White Harbor with it. Lyanna dismounted gracefully and took his hands. Lord Wyman, your welcome warms the heart. It has been long since I walked northern soil. And the north is better for it, my queen, Wyman said, voice trembling with emotion. Sirius blinked up at him curiously. You don't have to kneel, he said simply. Father says you only kneel in front of the gods. Wyman chuckled, rising with effort. Then your father is a wise man, young lord. You have your mother's courage, I see. Lyanna smiled faintly. He has his father's stubbornness too. Laughter broke the tension, and the gates of Newcastle opened wide. As Lyanna and Sirius stepped inside, the banners of House Stark and House Manderley fluttered side by side, and above them, a new standard, red and gold with the Gryffindor lion, snapped in the northern wind. The Queen of Narnia had returned to the north, and the north was ready to honor her as one of their own. Lord Wyman Manderley was not a man easily astonished, yet the day Lyanna Stark walked into his hall with wolves at her side, the old lord felt the ground shift beneath him. He had welcomed kings and envoys before, but never a legend. After the initial greetings and feasting, he could barely contain his curiosity. When the musicians fell silent and the servants withdrew, Wyman leaned forward on his cushioned chair, his pale eyes fixed on Lyanna. Forgive an old man's nosiness, my lady, but tell me, why now? After all these years, why return to the north? Lord Manderley asked. Lyanna smiled faintly. For the same reasons any woman returns home, Lord Wyman. To see my kin. My brother Benyon weds soon, and I would not have the last Stark son married without me there to witness it. I came to share his joy, and to remind my family that I have not forgotten where I was born. A wedding, then, and perhaps more. Winterfell will rejoice to see you. Gods, the songs they'll write. Lord Manderley looked excited. The lord's laughter boomed through the hall, though his mind was already turning like the gears of a clock. A queen of a wealthy realm, here in my hall. He imagined Narnian ships docking in his harbor, casks of fire whiskey stacked beside barrels of salted fish, gold flowing through Manderley coffers. A single parchment signed in her name could change the fortune of his house forever. My lady, forgive my boldness, but a trade accord between White Harbor and your kingdom would benefit both our peoples. Narnian steel for northern furs, fire whiskey for grain. The sea could bind our houses tighter than any treaty. Wyman Manderley asked, full of hope at the prospect of prosperity to his house. We can speak of it at Winterfell, Lord Wyman. I do not come as a queen today, but as a sister returning home. Lyanna looked every bit like a queen. Still, the promise in her words made his heart pound. Lyanna did not linger in White Harbor. The sea voyage had been long, and her heart yearned for the cold air and grey stones of home. Wyman tried to persuade her to rest, but she shook her head. Each hour I spend here, Winterfell waits. My family waits. I must go. The lord frowned, stroking his beard. Then ye shall not go alone. The road to Winterfell is long, and I would not have the wolves of the sea reach the wolves of the snow unguarded. I'll send 100 of my best men. Swords, archers, riders, all loyal Manderley blood. Lyanna tried to reject the offer. Lord Wyman, that is too much. I already have my own guards, trained soldiers from Narnia. We can manage the road. Too much? He bellowed. Nothing is too much for a Stark. You'll take my man, or I'll ride with you myself. And so it was settled. Wyman Manderley, round, red-faced, and determined, declared he would accompany her to Winterfell. The news spread quickly, and preparations began at once. To honor her station, the Manderleys brought out one of their finest treasures, a carriage carved from white oak, its panels etched with silver inlays of leaping fish and roaring lions, draped in blue silk. Fit for a queen and her young prince, Lord Manderley said proudly. But when the time came to depart, Lionel and Sirius refused. The courtyard was crowded, guards in Manderley green and blue, servants, sailors, and half the city's folk pressed against the gates to glimpse her one last time. Then gasps rippled through the crowd as Lionel stepped toward her dire wolf. The beast stood massive and proud, its fur like grey snow, its eyes gleaming gold. A Narnian skin-changer knelt to fasten a saddle of black leather and gold-threaded straps upon the wolf's broad back. Another carried a smaller seat for Sirius, fixing it securely on the other dire wolf. "My lady," he said, aghast. "Surely you will not," Lord Wyman began, but Lionel cut him off in mid-sentence. "Surely I will." There is no argument after that. Sirius grinning as he climbed up on his dire wolf, "Father said it's safer than any carriage." The dire wolves gave a low, rumbling growl, not of anger, but of readiness. Wyman Manderley could only stare, mouth open in wonder. And then it happened, something the people of the North would tell their grandchildren for generations. The gates opened, and Lyanna Stark Greyfender rode forth astride her dire wolf, her dark hair streaming behind her like a banner, her son riding beside her, fast and laughing. The 100 Manderley guards followed, their armor shining in the pale light, but all eyes were fixed on her. An old woman in the crowd whispered, tears in her eyes, "The wolf kings of old rode like that, when the world was young. I never thought to see the day." From the walls of White Harbor to the fields beyond, the cry spread, "The Wolf Queen." And as the hoofbeats and pawprints faded northward, Lord Wyman Manderley wiped his eyes and laughed. "By the gods," he said softly, "the songs will never be the same again." The journey from White Harbor to Winterfell was long, but the road stretched open and welcoming before them, blanketed by fresh snow that glittered beneath the pale sun. Lyanna led the company from the front, her dark hair whipping in the cold wind as she rode astride her dire wolf. The creature moved with a regal stride, silent and sure-footed over the frozen earth. Behind her came the banners of House Manderley and the Narnian escort, two worlds marching together under one banner of wolf and dragon. Lord Wyman Manderley rode a sturdy mare, wrapped in furs and muttering between gasps of breath, "Gods, woman, I've seen men half my weight collapse after a single mile, and here you are, riding that beast like it was born for you." Lyanna smiled faintly without turning back. "It was, and so was I." Wyman chuckled, shaking his head. "You Starks are mad. No wonder the songs never die about your lot." Sirius, riding the second dire wolf beside his mother, grinned. "Father says songs only last if you do something worth singing about." "A wise man, your father," Wyman said, smiling. "But I hope he also said a man should rest once in a while." "He did," Sirius replied innocently, "but he never follows his own advice." The Manderley lord laughed, the sound booming across the cold air. The Narnians who came with Lyanna were unlike any soldiers the North had seen. Their discipline was eerie, silent, focused, their beasts moving as if bound to their souls. Each of the 10 skin-changers carried chests filled with gold, weapons, and gifts for Benion's wedding. Even their wagons seemed full of gifts, moving smoother than any northern wheel should over the icy ground. At night, when they made camp, the difference between the two groups showed most. The Manderley soldiers built rough fires and simple shelters. The Narnians, however, raised smooth black tents stitched with golden thread that shimmered under torchlight, their blades polished until the flames danced across the steel. It was on one such night, as snowflakes drifted lazily through the air, that Sirius tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Can we train?" Lyanna looked up from where she was oiling her sword. "You've been riding all day, little wolf." Sirius lifted his small practice blade. "Then my arms are already warmed up." Wyman, sitting beside the fire, raised an amused brow. "You train the boy yourself?" Lyanna rose, drawing her sword from its sheath. The steel gleamed red in the firelight. "Of course. Who else should teach him to fight for what's his?" "Gods preserve us," Wyman muttered, settling his fur cloak tighter. "This I've got to see." Steel rang against steel. Sirius darted forward, his strikes light but quick, his movements fluid. Lyanna parried each blow effortlessly, though her eyes softened with pride. "Better," she said, "but your stance is still too open. You'd lose your footing on ice." "I won't," he said, adjusting. "Watch." He feinted left, spun, and aimed for her leg. She stepped aside, turned her wrist, and disarmed him in one smooth motion. The sword clattered into the snow. Sirius blinked up at her, breathless. "Never fight to prove your strength," she told him, lowering her blade. "Fight to protect what matters." He grinned, eyes bright. Then next time, I'll protect my sword. Wyman's deep laughter echoed across the camp. By the 7, he's got your fire, my lady. Lyanna allowed herself a small smile. You are saying that because you haven't met his father. The next night, 5 of Wyman's best soldiers, men who had fought pirates and wildlings, came forward, armor glinting in the firelight. If it pleases you, my lady, one said, bowing, we'd be honored to test our skill against the Queen of Narnia herself. Lyanna only nodded, stepping into the ring of snow the men cleared for her. Her blade sang as she drew it. Very well, she said. Come at me as if you mean it, else it's not worth doing. The first man lunged, and she sidestepped, knocking his sword aside and striking him lightly on the chest with the flat of her blade. He fell back, gasping. The second tried to flank her. She spun, parried, and caught his wrist, twisting his weapon away. The third came in from behind, too slow. She turned, her braid whipping across her shoulder, and kicked his legs from under him. The last 2 circled her warily. One swung high. She ducked. The other aimed low. She leapt aside, slashing his belt clean in half. In less than half a minute, 5 men were down in the snow. Sirius clapped from the sidelines, grinning wide. You missed one. Lyanna laughed. Did I? She turned, tossed her sword lightly, and caught it again, its tip resting an inch from the last man's throat before he even realized she'd moved. Wyman's mouth fell open. Gods be good, he muttered. You could lead an army yourself. Lyanna sheathed her blade. I already do. Later, as the camp quieted, Sirius sat near the fire, sharpening his small sword while the Manderley men whispered in awe. Did you see her move? One murmured. Like the wind itself. They say her husband killed Roose Bolton and beat up all the Bolton guards, another whispered. If that's true, then the North is blessed to have them both. I, said a third, shaking his head, but I wouldn't want to be the poor fool who makes her angry. Wyman watched her from across the fire, a mug of ale in hand. Your mother's a fierce one, lad. Sirius looked up, smiling. Father says she's fiercer when she's angry. The old lord chuckled deeply. 7 hells, then may the gods keep your father safe. They rode on through frozen rivers and silent forests, and by the 5th day, the spires of Winterfell rose in the distance, grey against the horizon, ancient as the snow itself. Lyanna drew her fur cloak tighter, her heart pounding with something between joy and sorrow. She could already feel the pull of home. Sirius followed her gaze. That's it, isn't it? He said softly. Yes, Lyanna murmured. That's home. And behind them, the soldiers and skin changers rode on in silence, for even hardened men could sense that this was no ordinary return. It was a legend coming home, the Queen of Narnia, riding north on a dire wolf, her son at her side, to a house that had thought her lost forever. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description.
Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Also, you can request any novel so I can turn into audiobooks. Check out our Patreon for more details.